Until you rival the last individual, we have achieved a quorum. And I'd like to kick off this meeting of the special meeting for the School Building Subcommittee at 150 Fairway Drive, North Kingstown, Rhode Island, April 7th, 2025, 4:30 p.m. start time. My name is Chris Murphy. I'm the chairman of this committee. The first item on our agenda is public comment. If you would please keep your comments to 5 minutes or under. I'll call on the folks as they signed up to speak. First one out of the gate, Joe Texera. I hope I said your name right, sir.
Perfect.
Oh, very good.
Just want to thank the committee for the opportunity to have our citizen taxpayers be able to speak concerning the $137 million school bond. I'm going to take us back to probably September, October of 2024 when I was one of the town council candidates running as an independent. And at that time, I had developed and found a problem with the $137 million school budget. The cost of the Davisville Middle School was, at that time, I pointed out to the town council, $1,000 per square foot. I said, I have never seen in the history $1,000 a square foot to build the school. In October, I wrote a letter to the Independent. The Independent printed that letter, again, me voicing opposition to the entire bond based on the Davisville Middle School of $1,000 per square foot. On March 18th, we had the Chief Operating Officer of RIDE come down and make a presentation to the school committee. Mr. Correa, I hope I'm pronouncing his name correct, was absolutely correct in everything he said. He pointed out the $1,000 per square foot. Never in the history of the state of Rhode Island, with any town or city, has there ever been a middle school costing $1,000 a square foot. Their concerns at the Rhode Island Department of Education was cost, and cost. Right now, I'm asking this subcommittee to have on hand in the next couple of weeks all receipts of how much we've spent so far. Because when I was listening to Mr. Correa, he said we're 1.5 million into this project. 1.5 million. Now it's probably more than that. I've heard 2 million. But we need to be transparent. As committee board members, you have a fiduciary responsibility along with Dr. Page that represents the town council. These questions should have been asked. Transparency of contracts and money and checks written and spent should be shown to the public. However, the money's sunk. The money's gone. Mr. Correa said there is zero reimbursement for the plans as they are now. When this vote was taken in November to pass the bonds, everybody said, Mr. Marlis, the town council, the school committee said, we're going to get 35 to 40% reimbursement. As it stands this evening, we're getting zero.
That's not correct.
Okay.
There's still, I just want to correct you because that's not what Dr. Carino said. He didn't say that we wouldn't get any reimbursements.
He said as of now there's zero.
No. Through the stage 2 application, he did not say there's zero. There is still a 35%. The 35% reimbursement has not gone anywhere. I just want to clarify that. We don't go back and forth with comments, but I just want to clarify your comment that that's not true.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, the main thing tonight is we demand transparency from you as committee members. Number 2, do not take a vote to push this thing forward. What we're asking right now is a pause, a stop, and a relook at the plan. One of his recommendations is for everyone to go and see the elementary school that they built in Providence for $44 million, which is 94,000 square feet. If Providence can do it, I'm quite sure North Kingstown can do it just as well, and maybe for $43 million. We don't have to spend 78 or 80 million or 90 million or $100 million for a middle school. That's insanity. You know it and I know it. That's why I'm here tonight. So I'm just asking, this committee has to be more transparent. Preserve all
30
your
seconds,
records.
sir.
Pardon?
30 seconds.
Thank you. Make sure that all records are preserved in this whole process, because you're losing the taxpayers' confidence. Show us how the money's been spent so far. I do thank you for allowing me to speak tonight.
Next speaker, Richard Welsh.
Good evening. The last time I was here, in this room, with, I guess, mostly the same people that are here, I mentioned in looking over the plan that was presented that I didn't understand why the committee was recommending, and the architect recommending, a two-story building. My feeling was, at the time, that your architect said, no, that's not the case. It's not less expensive to build a three-story building. It's funny how RIDE seems to feel the same way. It's a very tight site. It needs as small a footprint as possible to save the land available for other things. You know, Mr. Texera said you're losing the credibility with the people who are going to end up paying this bill, and those of us, the taxpayers in town. If it looks like you're overspending, which the people from RIDE said that in some cases, like the demolishing the building, you're showing double the cost of anybody else in the state. They review the numbers of everybody else's plans. You don't get that opportunity to see that. But I gotta tell you that as somebody who sat on the building committee for the building that we're in right now, for somebody who's been in construction for over 45 years, I have to question where you're getting your guidance from. I don't have a lot of faith in the answers I listened to the last time from your architect. And personally, my feeling is that this board should disband and should start all over again and throw out the baby with the bathwater, because the architect and this committee have spent all of this time and money that we can't recoup, and what have we got? We've got no approval from RIDE to go forward, just a lot of things negative. I was thoroughly embarrassed by what I heard RIDE say to the school committee. Thank you.
The next speaker is Holly Quinn?
Quinn.
Quinn, gotcha. You're up.
I know, it's a tough one. Hi, Holly Quinn. I'm just here to give my little 2 cents about the bond. Hoping you don't take a vote tonight. I think we need more time, as everybody else has stated. As we know, there's a lot of things that are up in the air. One of the big bones of contention has been the redistricting. And with this school, and now all of a sudden we're gonna add more students into Whitford Middle School, where do those kids come from? So is that gonna be another bone of contention down the line where there could be more redistricting issues that come up? Also, pouring over some information on the site, the archaeological dig. I don't know where that is. That's on the old document in there about the site, Whitford Middle School. I don't know, there's no update to it, we haven't heard anything. I know there's been a lot of comments about social media and what's on social media, but I have to say, a lot of people go to social media because we're not getting answers. There's no transparency. We ask questions, we don't get responses. We send emails, we don't get responses. So you go to social media with the best of intentions that you kind of throw it out there as a question, seeing what everybody else knows, what everybody else has heard. And instead, there's some people in this town that instead of wanting to talk about the actual what you're posting about, they want to come after you, and it all becomes about you. And I know Mr. Mancini has gone to the Independent and talked about social media with him and feeling like he's been bullied. There's those of us in town that feel the same way. I'm not gonna run to the Independent with an article and talk to them about it. It is what it is. People feel the way they feel. I'm still gonna ask questions and share information like other people do, in the hopes that maybe somebody out there knows something we don't. There's a couple of pages that actually learned some things on, new people started to post, some redistricting stuff I found out about. So, I just, the bond is the bond, it is what it is, and we're here. Can we just not vote on it tonight? Can we give it a little bit more time? Everybody was shocked and surprised with what Ride said, even the committee members, to learn that there's a meeting every Wednesday that people didn't know about, that there's just a lot we still don't know about. The demographic study, the new one. Are those the right, are we happy with the numbers we got from the vendor that we just used? Do they match what we sent to Ride? There's just a lot of questions, and we need to, even the site, the website, and I know we've talked about this for a long time, it's really not user-friendly. So if I don't know, if a new piece of information comes in, you can pop it to the top so everybody can read it, and then at some point maybe it filters down, or, I don't know, I'm not a tech person, but to try and find things sometime, you really gotta poke and dig, and that's actually how I came up and found the archaeological letter. I had no idea that one even existed, to be honest with you. And then when I dug, for more to try and find if there was anything after that, there's nothing after that. So, do we have to have one? Did we have one? How does that work? Does it not happen until the building's destroyed? I don't know, but I just wish there was more upfront than us having to dig. I was even surprised, I sent an email and one of the newest members on the school committee, Sherry Kennedy, was like, we'll APR that. And I was kinda hoping I wouldn't have to APR that. I was hoping those days were over. Like we could just get, and it was a generic answer, like how'd the meeting go when you all went up there to Providence to talk to Ride? That's all I wanted to know, and she was like, APR that. We shouldn't have to APR everything. I thought those days, and that just costs taxpayer money when we APR. So, I just think there's a lot of questions. That's it. So just, please don't vote tonight, just, let's keep talking about it. Thank you.
Teresa Hirsch.
Thank you, good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I and many of my neighbors have attended all of the recent subcommittee meetings on transportation, start times, and redistricting. Two important issues have come up that I'd like to bring to your attention tonight because they tie intimately to the use of buildings in our district. I hope this is an opportunity to see some of the layers that go into the complex issue of redistricting students. Please, I'm asking to discourage redistricting and prioritize construction of walls in Fishing Cove, Quinnesset, and Stony Lane. First, Dr. Rachel Santa, who's worked with Dr. Duba for around 20 years now, and is now the current head of student services, has discussed in many taped subcommittee meetings her plans to use this space opened up by the redistricting of Hamilton families. Dr. Santa is interested in moving both the Compass K program from Stony Lane to Hamilton and utilizing additional space for the clinical day resident and non-resident students, which currently resides at Davisville Academy. For transparency, I would ask, why haven't these conversations and these plans been presented to the public as part of the redistricting conversations? Instead, we hear catchphrases, something is on fire. Hamilton is the largest elementary school in our district and the only one with walls and some space. And it's not on fire, it's full, and the numbers are actually dropping according to RIDE and recent facility plans that we've seen that were used for the bond. Please prioritize construction of walls on all of the elementary schools and discourage abrupt redistricting plans until after construction. Second, and maybe a more serious issue, is set to happen at Fishing Cove Elementary. Here, Dr. Santa would like to move the preschool program out and over to Davisville Academy. A recent RIDE NASDAQ review of that plan clearly stated that this was an inappropriate location for preschool children. Megan Riley, a school board member, has shared a copy of this review on Facebook, but I'm sure that it's formally available in NKSD records. Dr. Santa would also like to allow a private organization called Momentum, which offers services to some of our students now, office space in Davisville Academy, so that their employees can offer convenient evaluation of NK students. Why would Momentum have this opportunity for free lights and electric paid for by NK residents? Instead, why not open up a clinical day program to allow NK students the opportunity to lottery into these smaller classrooms, giving the clinical day students a well-rounded classroom similar to our current pre-K program, and avoid redistricting until after bond construction is complete. Additionally, at Fishing Cove, there's an issue of diversity. After listening to a father from Reynolds Farm inviting everyone to come and look at the diversity in his neighborhood, my husband and I did just that. Sure enough, we saw families and children from many different backgrounds. To separate these children, this neighborhood from the Fishing Cove School sends a message, however unintentional, against diversity. The other day, I listened to an hour-and-a-half discussion on the Subcommittee for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, discussing racism, which our high schoolers had expressed concern for. I wonder who will speak up regarding this proposal which impacts diversity at Fishing Cove, and particularly Reynolds Farm. For those of us watching these discussions, we see very clearly that something is wrong here when bus routes are the primary excuse for choosing to move a minority neighborhood into an entirely different neighborhood, into a school with an overwhelming minority students. Due to the lack of information regarding ethnicity in the data being used currently by the redistricting subcommittee, there is a bias that the movement of any students to any school is equally okay, since you are only looking at numbers, distance, and bus routes. If NK is redistricting, it's clear from a recent RIDE study that Forest Park, which is geographically adjacent to Quinnesset, is overcrowded and should be considered for redistribution of students. Why is this option not being discussed?
30 seconds, ma'am.
Finally, RIDE representative on the transportation starts time and redistricting subcommittee recommend to save money, we have an opportunity to build a preschool wing onto our new Wickford Middle School to save money. This may be the easiest and least expensive way to create a STAR and RIDE compliant preschool building for our smallest students. He felt that it was completely within the scope of our current bond, and I hope that this subcommittee will seriously consider that in its next steps. Thank you.
Ricky Thompson.
Ricky Thompson, 194 Plain Road, good afternoon. For the sake of time, I have a prepared statement that I'd like to read. I'd like to begin by reminding this committee of the recent spoken and printed quotes that include, North Kingstown officials dismiss state guidance. North Kingstown officials ignored repeated state warnings. North Kingstown's architect ignored state recommendations. North Kingstown submissions to the state are disorganized and incomplete. North Kingstown officials refuse to respond to questions. North Kingstown's town council is financially liable. Actually, in my eyes, North Kingstown taxpayers are liable. The state is critical of North Kingstown's new school spending and significant vendor costs. The new school construction costs are significantly higher than allowed. The state is critical of the higher than projected costs to raise the Wickford Middle School. The state reimbursements to North Kingstown are at risk. Projected new Wickford Middle School costs are significantly above average. Mismanagement of the new Wickford Middle School project. And finally, and sadly, a resident recently commented at a town council meeting labeling the school process a disaster. That to me speaks volumes. At this point, I'm hopeful that the members of this committee can move past what is and move forward with the best interests of North Kingstown. Furthermore, understanding that reimbursement clock is ticking, I truly believe that if this committee chooses to buckle down, you still have time and the ability to get this right, including developing and building a quality and truly cost-effective new middle school, ensuring bond fund availability to properly repair and improve our elementary and high schools. I'm even hearing that your new middle school decisions have the potential to alleviate the need for redistricting now and in the foreseeable future. Please, please, opposed to rushing your vote to get this done, please take the time to get this right for the whole of North Kingstown. I'm hopeful that the members of this subcommittee are up for this challenge. Thank you.
Andrew Begin, begin. Andrew.
Thank you. Andrew Begin, 77 Tower Hill Road. Bunch of notes here. I'm going to paraphrase in the interest of time. I do want to echo, was it Holly, maybe, that said, you know, I've been having a hard time keeping track of what's going on and when things are happening. So I don't know if I'm subscribed to the wrong email list or Facebook page or something, but I think Richard or Ricky, you know, for the Facebook post in our town is why I'm here, and I've been trying to follow along. I was here in the fall. I basically just two things to mention. One of them is around the cost. I watched the meeting from March 18th, I believe, and I'm still left unsure of what the distance is, and it sounded like, you know, it's either, you know, maybe there's 3 items, and I'd love to understand and have clarity if there is some in terms of, you know, is it a function of overcharging or vendors that are expensive? Is it something that we have criteria, whether it's energy efficiency, accessibility, future forwardness, that warrants the higher price tag? Or is it some miss in terms of maybe the budget wasn't discussed and therefore it got overshot without, you know, the finer pencil? Really came here just to kind of understand where we're at with that, if that's one of the agenda items. The second topic, and it may be early for this, but I mentioned it in the fall, and I'll just try and be here when the time is right around design and educational programming. I think it might have been on the agenda. I'm 40. I was in elementary school when the school got its first computer in each classroom, and I was in college when Facebook was created. And I've had an interesting front row seat to many of the technological advancements over the past, say, 20, 25 years. And I share this because, you know, and today I work at a software company. I use AI tools on a daily basis, etc. You know, and I pay as close attention as I can, and I'm even nauseated at how fast things are moving. And I think that's interesting because why I care to be part of the process is I have 3 kids that are going to go through the school. I want to make sure that by the time my 5-month-old gets to the school, she's not sitting in a graveyard of outdated tech and relics of things that we thought would be cutting edge. And I've seen it myself. I've sat in conference rooms with funny looking cameras that never got used. And so it's interesting because we want to set our students up for success. I want to make sure that we do so with a interesting, like, foundational principles-based approach, and make sure that we're not, sort of teaching the abstractions without the fundamentals. So whether it's, you know, maybe homes will be 3D printed, but you know, in some cases, you know, woodworking is very important, and craftsmanship, and you could say similar things around digital cameras and music and everything else. There are fundamentals, and hopefully many of the people in this room have listened to something, you know, a vinyl record through a tube amp and transistors. And so I just want to make sure when we're building a school in the year 2025, 26, 27, that we don't jump to, okay, we need an AI and robotics thing, but leave out some of the traditional foundational technology shop, wood shop, Photoshop, etc. Making sure that, you know, as we you know, send our kids to school, that you know, it's really the education inside those walls. And I think one of the reasons why I brought it to this meeting is because I know technology can be expensive. People can get excited about it, and you know, I'm not sure if that's a big line item in the budget, but it's something that I think we should take a clear look at to make sure that we're not you know, getting oversold by a technology vendor who has a lot of new things that won't be new 5 years from now. So, thank you.
That was the last call for any public comment.
Can I speak?
Certainly.
Pam Panero,
May I?
710.
Your name?
Pam Panero, I've been very concerned about what I've seen with the bond and middle school project recently. I supported this second bond with reservations as I wanted more transparency and communication. The letter from RIDE, the comments from RIDE at the school committee meeting, and the article in the paper about the high-level meeting with multiple town officials has me concerned. I hope tonight that these issues will be addressed head-on and officially at this meeting. I'm trying to keep an open mind and want to hear a response to these concerns pointed out by RIDE from our official town school administrators and elected officials. If mistakes have been made or process been lacking, then this should be acknowledged, a plan of correction should occur, and then this plan should be implemented. I think this would help improve trust in the community. I also just wanted to comment about the middle school / pre-K option. I was actually one of the few people who was at the master planning meeting where that idea evolved. I think Mr. Mezzanotte was there as a parent, and I was there as a parent. And in my personal opinion, it never got fully vetted through the public because it was an idea that was born out of that meeting because the group of us, even though it was small, did not love the 5th through 8th grade option. The year prior, or 2 years prior, kids got redistricted, and then a year later, they wanted to then move 5th grade from Hamilton to Wickford Middle School, a year after they had just done a huge redistricting. People are not comforted by all the redistricting that has happened in this town. How can you? I myself was redistricted as a child between 2 schools that then my children were redistricted at the very same times. Hearing town officials talk about how their kids got redistricted over and over and over again is not comforting. So, if there is a way to make this middle school bond project address redistricting, I mean, we all know it's going to happen on occasion, but the amount it has happened in North Kingstown in my life is really, I think, above and beyond what should be needed. I think that should be really considered, and if we have to take more time to get it right, then that should be done. Thank you.
Thank you. There being no additional public comment, I would like to invite Dr. Duba to address the update from the March 26, 2025 meeting with the RIDE School Building Authority that took place. We'll go through the first item is a summary of that meeting, and the second item under this is a next steps of response to RIDE. Dr. Duba.
Thank you. All of you have the summary that was sent to you for the meeting. I'm just going to read this so that way.
Can you speak up, please?
Definitely can. I will read these comments, that way we have it here to discuss, but also members of the community also have the response. It's also part of the school committee agenda packet as well. So it is up on the website. So I just want to start off just kind of summarizing historically where we came from. So a few notes that I have here. So we scheduled this meeting last week. We felt it was important to get in front of all of the concerns, to be able to put out there to everyone in the community the purpose of that meeting that we had at the RIDE. Unfortunately, last minute we were asked to change the location. We tried to change the location. We weren't able to do so because we were not within the 48 hours, and then changing it back would have just caused confusion of where we were meeting. So we had to cancel the meeting and postpone. But this meeting was supposed to happen last week. The purpose of this meeting tonight is to provide information to the committee and the public regarding the meeting with the Department of Education and the School Building Authority and the next steps in the Stage 2 addendum. It is important to note that Dr. Carano from the Rhode Island Building Authority was invited to a school committee meeting on March 18th by the school committee. The committee hoped to clarify some aspects of the Stage 2 application requirements and RIDE comments, as well as clarification on the demographic study. During that meeting, concerns were raised regarding the high cost of the fees from Perkins Eastman, as well as the overall cost of Woodford Middle School, the new school. For clarification, it needs to be noted that the total cost of expenditures of $1.6 million, which is referred to by RIDE, includes the project for the 2023 bonds, a feasibility study for recommendations of a new versus renovations of Woodford Middle School, and the current Stage 2 application for the 2024 bond. The higher than normal expenses mentioned by RIDE officials at that time has stemmed from site location issues as the originally suggested site in the master plan was not usable due to wetlands. A wetland study was conducted in May of 2023. In addition, a phase 1 environmental site assessment was completed in August of 2023 for the Davisville Municipal Site. The cost will be explained further in this document, and you have a copy of that. I just wanted to note that when we talk about the amount of this project, it has been broken down from 3 different projects that have happened since the beginning of this application. The meeting on Wednesday, March 26th at the Rhode Island Department of Education was initiated by the North Kingstown School Department to discuss and review the path forward with the intention of addressing all concerns the RIDE School Building Authority may have. It has been said, and it was in the paper, that we were summoned by the Department of Education. That was untrue. We had originally scheduled that meeting. Dr. Carano also asked us to include representatives from our school committee, town council, and town manager, along with school department officials and the project team, to make sure that we were all on the same page with what we were discussing at that meeting. The following individuals were in attendance at the meeting: Dr. Carano, Kelia Kenter, and Brian LeMay represented the school building authority. From the North Kingstown School Department staff and school committee, there was myself, Robert Mezzanotti, Erin Earl, and Megan Riley. From the town of North Kingstown staff and town council, it was Ralph Mollis, Greg Mancini, and Kim Page. From Jacobs, our owner's project manager, Ina Knox, was in attendance. From Perkins Eastman, it was Mark McCarthy and Tina Greco. And from Rouse, it was James Partridge and Derek Elson. The meeting focused on reviewing potential solutions and responses to RIDE Stage 2 comments, which were submitted to them by the North Kingstown School Department on February 15th. At the time of this meeting, North Kingstown School Department had not received any follow-up on those comments that were submitted regarding the submission. The North Kingstown School Department remains deeply engaged with RIDE to find cost-saving measures that align with district goals. Representatives from the town council and school committee were invited to ensure all stakeholders are fully informed and have a clear understanding of the process and its details. It is everyone's goal that school projects we have submitted to RIDE's SBA receive the maximum eligibility of statewide reimbursement. During the meeting, the application, costs, and next steps were discussed, with the goal of doing everything possible to obtain RIDE approval for the submission this May, along with qualifying for the maximum possible reimbursement on this project. The North Kingstown School Department team is committed to ensuring that all requested supplemental information is submitted and addressed as needed. North Kingstown is committed to delivering the most cost-effective and sustainable school building. The design team continues to work on finding ways to save costs, which will be provided to RIDE SBA. Some of the options currently under discussion include the possibility of adding a 3rd floor, which may reduce the building's footprint and save on-site costs. In some cases, building upwards may be more cost-efficient than expanding the footprint. The design team is reviewing takeoffs and unique pricing identified by the estimator to ensure that these are aligned with market conditions. The team is also working on streamlining the design, such as reducing the amount of glazing, creating a more cost-effective building envelope, tightening the footprint, and making the mechanical and electrical systems more efficient. During the meeting with RIDE, other suggestions were raised that the design team is considering implementing, if feasible, a more compact stacked building design for cost savings. Reducing project contingencies, although this option presents certain risks, the team is closely monitoring this to ensure that contingencies and escalation are still applied according to industry standards. Potential savings through construction delivery models, including faster construction timelines. In addition, RIDE has suggested we reconsider other educational programs that were previously discussed with the Building Advisory Committee. If these programs are housed in the new middle school, it could increase eligibility for reimbursements, such as a 6 through 8 middle school with a completely separate wing for our district preschool programs. This will provide a newly constructed learning environment to meet Bright Star's requirements, increase capacity for preschool enrollment in the future, and provide a stronger foundation for early learning by increasing opportunities for young children in their future success in school. A second option is having a 5 through 8 middle school model in our district that will bring the 5th grade students from the elementary schools into both middle schools. A similar model would be implemented at Davisville Middle School. This would increase utilization at both buildings, provide flexibility of classroom spaces, and reduce overcrowding at the elementary schools. The building is currently in the pre-schematic design phase, with 3 more phases to follow. In these phases, the proposed design will be estimated and evaluated with the goal of maintaining educational program needs for the 21st century, and including sustainable features while keeping costs as low as possible. The district is working closely with the design team to explore alternative materials, building systems, and construction delivery methods to determine ways to reduce costs. Additionally, we have requested feedback from RIDE, SBA, and cost-saving measures and are looking at how to implement and incorporate these recommendations into the design. Some history and project expenses. It is also important to discuss the total expenditures the district has expended since the first Stage 1 application. In February of 2022, the previous administration submitted the original Stage 1 application. Shortly after, there was a turnover of key district-level administrators. In May of 2021, the North Kingstown School Department hired Kelia Kenter, ALEP, to complete a master facility plan for the school community. The final plan was issued in June of 2022. In April of 2023, the school committee approved the services for owner's project manager with Jacobs and architectural engineering services with Perkins Eastman for the new middle school. Between the spring and summer, the school department worked with its vendors to create designs for a new consolidated 5 through 8 middle school on the property of Quinnesset Elementary School. After an environmental site study, it was found that the identified land at Quinnesset was wetlands and not ideal for a new middle school. In the summer, early fall, the team then investigated using the land at Davisville Middle School for the site of the new consolidated middle school. Designs were drawn and a plan was shared with the district. This plan for a consolidated 6 through 8 middle school on the current property of Davisville Middle School was then approved by the building committee, school committee, and town council to be voted on by the residents of North Kingstown for a school construction bond of $167 million. In November of 2023, the North Kingstown residents voted it down along with a combined vote for the public safety complex. The consolidated school option, along with the associated bond, failed during the public vote, as the North Kingstown community did not support this option. Following the failed bond vote, the district conducted a feasibility study, which concluded that the new Whitford Middle School building was the most viable option. The building committee then recommended a single 6 through 8 middle school at the site of the current Whitford Middle School, keeping 2 middle schools in our town. From December of 2023 through October of 2024, plans were developed and communicated to the residents of our town. In addition to a new 6 through 8 middle school, recommendations were made to renovate the current Davisville Middle School and much needed capital improvement projects for all other schools in the district. The new school construction bond would improve all schools in the district. In November of 2024, the school construction bond in the amount of $137 million for a new 6 through 8 Whitford Middle School and capital improvements to all school buildings was approved by the voters. The Stage 2 application was submitted to RIDE SBA on September 15, 2024, and the Stage 2 application addendum was submitted to RIDE SBA on February 15, 2025. And recently, I didn't have this in here, but we did ask to make sure that we would receive the comments by this meeting, and we did get the comments back for the addendum, which you all have in front of you, and is uploaded on our website, on the facility page. Breakdown of project costs paid from spring of 2023. So we have a breakdown here, and there's an additional sheet. It's, the only way I can get it on one page, it's small, but that you have as a PDF. So the first bond, the 2023 bond for a consolidated middle school for the district, that project had us look at 2 different sites. The original site was at Quinnesset, where the current Quinnesset Elementary School is. And then we had to do site studies at DMS when we found out that, it was around July, or it was kind of right when I came and started, we found out that we could not use Quinnesset because of the wetlands. And so we looked at what other sites we had in town, and we identified, let's look at Davisville Middle School and the park. Those projects, total cost for that project right there, of looking at the two sites for Consolidated Middle School, for that 2023 bond, that was a cost of $910,450. It was $54,000 for OPM services with Jacobs. It was $850,000 for the architectural engineering services from Perkins. And then there were environmental studies for $6,450 from Mark. That was the first looking at consolidated school for the district and looking at two different sites. Then we were asked to do a feasibility study to see, could we just keep Wickford and renovate Wickford Middle School, or do we need to build a new school? That feasibility study cost $59,561.64. $10,000 was for OPM services with Jacobs. $44,708 was for services through Perkins, and $4,853.64 was for site work through Park. Through that study, we determined that we did need, and the committee approved and the school committee approved, for us to look at a new school, not renovating Woodford Middle School, but building a new school and keeping two schools in our town, both 6th through 8th grade. Work had to be done for that. And that was what we brought forward for the bonds in 2024, which was for 2 middle schools in town, right? Building a new middle school at Wickford for grades 6 through 8, and the capital improvement projects throughout the district, and that bond passed. The project cost for that was $641,710. Jacobs was $28,500 for OPM services. The architectural services for the drawings and any other work was $428,210 from Perkins. And for Rouse, because Rouse is doing all of the architectural design work for stage 2 for the capital improvement projects in the district, that was $185,000. So the total cost that we have paid so far of invoices that we have from September, well, back from summer of 2023, back from like June, up through now, is $1,611,721.64. So when we talk about that amount, we have to look at historically what has been done in this district, what projects were looked at, what site work was done, and what sites were looked at. That bring us to today of building a new Wickford Middle School on the site of WMS, renovating DMS, and the capital improvements. You have an additional breakdown on the other page which goes through all of the invoices. The concern that has been flagged thus far is the estimated cost of the new Wickford Middle School. Other capital improvement projects are tracking on target with their projections. At present, Wickford Middle School project is estimated at $77 million. The building's gross area is 77,717 square feet, after some modifications that were completed prior to the stage 2 submission. The estimated project costs include site work, net zero design with geothermal wells, demolition, new furniture, technology, playing fields, contingencies for escalation, and soft costs for consultant fees. We will continue to look for savings to reduce the overall cost of the project. Additional cost factors that are going into this new building are the net zero energy design, which is approximately $4.9 million in order to do so, and coastal code required windborne debris resistant exteriors of $500,000. Wickford Middle School is planned to be the district's first truly net zero building with energy efficient design, geothermal wells, and solar panels. As such, it is difficult to present an apples to apples comparison with the state of Rhode Island, as there are no truly similar schools. While there are net zero schools, none include geothermal wells, which make Wickford Middle School a genuinely net zero building. In terms of cost, when compared to schools in neighboring New England states, the building costs align with current market conditions for buildings of this type. It's also challenging to compare costs with other districts, as many are dealing with significant school construction budget overages, making it difficult to assess actual budgets. Furthermore, to avoid budget overruns due to the ongoing rising costs of construction, proper contingencies and escalations need to be calculated into the budget. Many districts are experiencing significant budget overruns, which has been a concern for stakeholders. The Whitford Middle School budget is set with guidelines from estimating professionals who recommend factoring in certain contingencies and escalation at this early stage of the design. And we've had discussions about going back and having to look at that to make sure that there's anything else that we can do with bringing those costs down. Upon the completion of the design and bid phase, it's possible that the final building cost will be lower than current projections. All design and budget details have been presented and discussed in detail during multiple school committee and school building committee meetings, as well as some town council meetings. Next steps. The school department received feedback on the Stage 2 addendum from Ride School Building Authority on Wednesday, April 2nd. The feedback will be shared with the building committee on April 7th for review, and the school committee, which is supposed to be tomorrow, but is now next week, will be discussed then. The administration and consultants are working on including the RIDE feedback in the design of the middle school and working on responses to provide back to the school building authority. A comprehensive response is due back to the Rhode Island Department of Education School Building Authority by May 5th, and a follow-up meeting with them is scheduled for May 14th. You have a breakout of the costs that we discussed earlier, and that goes through each area that I talked about.
Mr. Chairman,
Sure.
may we have that available to the public on the school website? What
This
was-
document
what-
we're reading from?
Yes.
Yes, I believe that will
Yeah,
be
and
posted.
it is attached to the current school committee packet. But
Thank you.
We'll move it there. Everything that we're talking about tonight will be on there for you to access.
Because you can't hear you.
Sorry. But I was talking about it.
Thank you. That
You're welcome.
summarizes number 3, item A. You did mention the next steps at RIDE. We'd like to review that if you would, right now.
So you all have the comments in front of you that we received. So there's 2 different documents. One document is the preliminary application review, and that goes through what needs to be submitted to them for additional information. We had a draft of this prior that we had met on Wednesday, but it wasn't finalized yet when we had our meeting Wednesday morning. Since then, we've looked at this and identified who needs to do what, as far as each bullet point here, if it's coming from Perkins Eastman, if it's coming from Rouse, if it's coming from Jacobs, if it's coming from us. Just want to give time for the building committee members looking at it, if any questions or comments regarding what we did receive regarding the application review. And we can go through each item. Well, the next one, we want to do ones again. So why don't we go through each, I'm gonna
In
go
the
through
interest,
each.
in the interest of being thorough and transparent, if you wouldn't mind going through each item, we'd all appreciate that.
So under project summary, okay?
Ken?
Yes.
Is this in the packet, the
So,
agenda packet?
It's on the website, so it's not, there's no agenda packet, but it's on the website on the facility page.
What's it called on the website?
So when you go on the website, down below where the stage 1 application is, there's a stage 2, then there's a button for the stage 2 addendum comments.
And those are in there right now? 'Cause
Should
I-
be.
All right, I couldn't find it, but maybe it is.
Just for your clarity, to answer your question, it's entitled North Kingstown Public Schools Fiscal Year 2025 Necessity of School Construction, Stage 2, SBA Preliminary Application Review.
Thanks.
Everybody get that? It's a mouthful.
Can you say it again, please?
No, got it.
If I can find
You
it.
did? I just don't, I can't find it.
Seriously, everybody get it?
No, I can't.
No.
Okay, once again.
So we're gonna read through it. What we can do is we'll email it, we'll email the link later. But it is on the school facility page as you scroll down where the stage 1 and stage 2 applications are located. It also has the comments that we just received.
The end of that sentence that I just read was SBA Preliminary Application Review. Those are the key words you want to look for in this particular document. Preliminary Application Review.
So as noted in the November 2024 Stage 2 review comments, the proposed Wickford Middle School project is several million dollars above the reimbursable amount. During subsequent meetings with the district and the design team, the Riot School Building Authority offered several strategies to maximize the district's reimbursement. So we'll go through this, and then we'll note, because Inga had a conversation earlier with Kelia regarding some stuff that they do have, that they have on here, but we already did submit. So revisit the design and cost estimate to lower the cost per square foot, to more closely align with the eligible reimbursement amount. Investigate the potential to increase the proposed enrollment to increase the reimbursable amount. Investigate the potential to add additional programming to increase the reimbursable amount. And reallocate any leftover available bond funding to other renovation projects across the district. So as far as the enrollment, we did submit that, we did send them, that's in their attachment, in the addendum. They do have information regarding increasing enrollment of the school. And then we also discuss other ways, and we'll get into, I know you have a presentation to show regarding other educational programming that could be at the school that would also increase enrollment.
And we did reallocate.
There you go.
And we did reallocate the leftover available bond funding to other projects, and we discussed that with the addition of the gyms.
Thank you.
And I'll try to speak as long as I can.
Provide updated narrative describing the additional capital improvement projects that have been added to the scope. So if we remember, right before we submitted, they told us to put additional projects in there because we wanted to take full benefit of the eligibility. So they said, why don't you put other projects that you have to get to that amount, which was about 16 million. So originally they said, oh, you have 26 million that you're not eligible for, but once we added additional students and we went through the formula with them, it was roughly 16 million. So we added additional capital improvement projects, but we all knew, even Ryan knew at the time, that we would need time to get the cost estimates in there because it was within that week of sending it to them, and that's what this comment is about.
So the narrative was provided, but we are working with RAI to get more clarification in terms of what else would they like to be added to that narrative.
The next one is a letter confirming approval to submit to stage 2 by the school committee, was provided by Jacobs, and it should be provided by the superintendent. I talked to Kelia about that today. The letter was signed by Inga, it needs to be signed by me. So that's just switching in the letter and who signed it.
And the meeting minutes are now available, so the reason why there was a letter is because the meeting minutes were not available at the time, so now we've submitted the minutes as well from that meeting on February 11th and February 12th.
The SBA has requested that the district provide a floor plan identifying the academic programs to be housed at Davisville Academy. That floor plan we have, that was something we were working with our committee, as well as that was something that we actually presented to the school committee at their last meeting. So we have that, that'll get submitted, that we had some changes to that. The SBA requested that the district confirm that assessments provided in stage 1 are more recent than 2018. I'll speak because that was.
Right, so this one actually was submitted on the February 15th, and it was identified. I emailed Killian and then emailed Ryan, They have confirmed that they accepted what was submitted on February 15th. She did not see the date, and the date was from 2023, and it was on every page. So this item is now voided. But we will, because they cannot retract the comments, we are still going to basically comment that this was accepted.
Under architectural feasibility educational program, previously the SBA requested that the district provide a discussion of how the addition of walls at Fishing Cove, Gwinnett, and Stony Lane will impact educational delivery, including class sizes, overall capacity, utilization, provide a capacity and utilization study for Fishing Cove, Gwinnett, and Stony Lane showing existing and proposed capacity and utilization. Comments on that one?
I think we need to work through this.
And we have, and we do have the demographic study, so they asked for a new demographic study, and we just received that as well, so that would get, tied into that explanation. The proposed new enrollment at Whitford Middle School will have an impact on how Davisville Middle School is populated and presumably how teaming will work. Please provide a narrative and floor plan describing how this change will impact the utilization of Davisville Middle School. I think after our conversation tonight, we'll see that that's something that probably won't be submitting specifically on that. There was a conversation I had with Kelia today, and was talking with her, just, we know that they had requested to us to increase capacity, looking at students, and more that we do that, right, and looking at that, we're taking students away from Davisville to put it Whitford to increase the reimbursement, but it's not helping us with the teaming that's gonna happen at Davisville. And I kind of, I had that conversation with her earlier today that, we're doing this was something that was requested for us to do, but, currently with the middle school with their size, doesn't have teaming. You're telling us to put a plan together to have teaming at the new building, but you're having us take it away from Davisville, and it just doesn't make sense. It's not going to, we're kind of fixing one problem in one school, but then creating a problem in another school by doing that and submitting to you a narrative and study of that. So, I explained how we're looking at other programs that would increase the enrollment versus trying to pull from one school to another, and it just does not work for us.
Gotcha.
Structural certification, provide certification from a professional structural engineer registered in Rhode Island that all buildings included in the capital improvement plan are structurally sound or can be made so reasonably.
So this was something that we had hoped to include in stage 3. There's a little bit historically, sometimes we were able to include this in stage 3 following the stage 2 approval. We had asked and inquired with RIDE, and they want us to include it with this application. So we have a proposal from Rouse about that, and we will include it as requested.
And that structural integrity report, do we have a dollar amount attached to that?
So I believe the cost is
10,500 to do all schools except for Whitford Middle School.
So, to do all schools, structural integrity report for every school in the district, with the exception of Whitford, $10,500. So, it's a necessity, it's being demanded by RIDE, and we're going to do it.
To clarify though, you have to do it whether it's now or later, so at some point you have to do it. So might as well do it. It's not like you will not have to do it in stage 3, you have to do it.
Understood. Thanks.
District high performance green status. Previously regarding the policy on use of CFC, HCFC refrigerant in the district provided a letter stating the town and school would submit approvals for these policies. The policy since has been written and was approved in September. Was it submitted then? Because I'm not sure why they would have, when we did the second round, because that policy was, we have it now, the policy was already approved.
At the time of the addendum, it was not final. But there was a memo stating that it was, but
Right.
so now we
Not
have
the
a
addendum.
final.
When the original was sent in.
It
a
was
letter.
not, it was a
But
letter.
the addendum, when we submitted the addendum, we already had the policy, but the policy was approved in September. So,
I may have
we just-
personally missed it, but
but that's it, we have it now, it's in the folder.
right, it's already in the
So
folder.
that was just something that we had to resubmit as a policy. For renovation projects at Davisville Academy, Davisville Middle School, Forest Park, Hamilton, and North Kingstown High School, It appears that there are many applicable Northeast Collaborative for High Performance Schools renovation requirements that have not been targeted. Please amend the NECHPS scorecard for each school to maximize the targeted points.
We are reviewing this at the moment. We reviewed some of it today with Rouse. This isn't Rouse's scope, and this will be submitted with the addendum coming up.
Okay, we have to submit one for Knesset as well.
Yeah.
This is separate. The renovation scope at Fishing Cove, Knesset, and Stony Lane constitutes major renovations and should target 110 NECHPS points. Please amend the NECHPS scorecard to reflect this. Again, we'll make sure that is reflected on the scorecard. Governor's Commission on Disabilities. The LEA has been in touch with the Governor's Commission on Disabilities. Please provide the date and documentation of that communication.
I have that. I will provide it.
Design and construction cost estimate. This is a long one. So the Whitford Middle School project, the SBA provided robust comments regarding the cost estimate in the November 13th communication. These were largely unaddressed, and there has not been an observable cost reduction effort by the design and cost estimating team for Whitford Middle School. Contingencies appear to be held in multiple places again, and the general conditions are for 18 months when the project is projected to take a lot longer. Further, exterior concrete masonry units, CMUs, construction and some of the exclusions, i.e. using 3,500 PSI concrete in lieu of 4,000 and ground improvements / rock removal, will likely generate additional costs. Please advise the cost estimate to address the concerns noted both in the November 13th communication and the additional ones noted below. So as
You comment on each section?
that's what's going to be under the bullets.
Oh, just the bullets? Okay.
You have something to.
Well, right, I mean, I don't understand this comment, so actually, I guess just high level of cost, I did talk to Ryan this afternoon, and some questions, I'm actually preparing an email in response to the cost estimate comments, because there are some inconsistencies and also things that need to be clarified, because for instance, general conditions for 18 months, and the project is gonna take a lot longer, that makes no sense. We are targeting this project construction for 18 months, and that's how the general conditions are typically assigned. So I'm not sure where a lot longer came from, for example. So those things we need to understand and clarify. Originally, we submitted for a longer duration, I think it was 22 months, but we were talking with the team and decided that the construction of this caliber could take 18 months. That was actually per Wright's comments from the initial submission. So some of those comments need to be vetted with them. We are going to vet them.
I think even 18 months for a 77,000 square foot building seems a bit long.
It is. I mean, I can tell you it could be done in 16.
Yeah.
But we went back and forth with the team, with Perkins Eastman, we discussed it, and we reduced it down from 22, I forget, 22 or 24 to 18. And when you set your estimate, you set general conditions for the duration of construction from the time you come to the site to the time you leave the site, not the construction manager. So, yes, planning takes a little longer before that, and closeout takes longer after that, but what is this comment a lot longer, we don't know. So we have to clarify some of these comments because we don't really understand them. Go ahead.
As noted in November, the overall cost per square foot is significantly high at almost 1,000 per GSF as compared to the RIDE reimbursable amount of 592 per GSF. Driving costs include 1.2 million in curtain wall, items that could be furniture, fixtures, and equipment, including lockers, marker boards, sound absorbing kennels, speech reinforcement, audio, visual, and lighting systems, curtain and rigging for cafeteria, gym, and art equipment. Other items previously noted in the November review. The electrical scope has not been clarified or repriced, and there is no information listed on electrical panels or lighting meaning that those costs are being generated as per square foot costs. Please provide line item cost breakdowns with unit costs and quantities. Plumbing and HVAC unit costs are much higher than the same scopes from the same cost estimator, at least 15 to 30% higher. Some of these scopes include water closet, urinal, water cooler, duct insulation, automatic temp controls, and test and balance. Please note the project specifies CMU exterior walls, which the SBA does not consider to be a 50-year material and will not be eligible for reimbursement. Please provide a 50-year alternate material.
Can, after your
Yes.
point,
Yeah.
that's not accurate, that's just, it was mislabeled,
Okay.
they're reading it backwards.
Yeah.
So what would,
CMU is a backup, not the exterior
Yeah.
wall, brick exterior.
I think there was one wall and
Yeah.
everything bracket.
so then we need to make sure that that's.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's no exposed CMU exterior.
No.
CMU being basically cinder blocks.
Yeah.
correct.
Cinder block, but
We're
in the
not
front
building
there
a
is
school
also
with a cinder
clay.
block exterior.
No.
No, they don't have. We are using it, it's just.
Something that's worth adding on the contingencies, which is the up above in the first bullet. So that was discussed, right? The contingencies, the way they were shown for what we see in industry standard across New England, and those were set by the estimator. There is also a RIDE budget, which is questionable. They also call for contingency and escalation. So some of those numbers were carried there as well as an owner's contingency. We did talk about that. Could possibly reduce that, but again, it makes contingencies somewhat tight. So how RIDE calculates contingencies and participates in them is not exactly how the rest of the industry does it. There is a calculation that RIDE recommends, and then there is a calculation that estimators carry. And it also depends on a delivery method, construction delivery method, which is construction manager at risk, lump sum, design build. So it's not a giant amount of money. There are some millions included in that, but and we are looking to the best recommendation to make on to how to carry the contingencies, but it may not be what the industry standard is versus what RIDE wants us to do. So, or how they calculate them. That is up for discussion, and we can have the two next to each other to show this committee in detail.
Okay.
Can I just ask a question about the FF&E cost?
So you
Just
probably
keep-
want to say what that means,
What, the furniture, fixtures, and equipment?
right?
So is that typically included in when they do the square foot cost? Or do they keep that separate? Is that a budgeting thing? They want to see it in one part of the budget but not the other? How is that being calculated, and why is that a driving cost?
Where are you?
It's the 1.2 million in curtain wall, and then the items underneath. It says items that could be furniture, fixtures, and equipment.
Right, so
Is that typically included?
So the way RISE calculates budget is construction cost. That's your estimate. That's the estimate from the third-party estimator that translates into construction cost. Then there is 20% of soft costs. Soft costs are basically consulting fees and any other owner contingencies or owner expenditures, and that cannot exceed 20%.
Like permits, insurance,
Correct.
all, soft costs.
Right. So construction cost plus soft cost, that total is what RIDE calculates their cost per square foot value. So what you see, for example, when you go to their budget worksheet, and for example, when it says $592 a square foot, that is construction cost plus the 20% soft cost. In addition to that, they also allow allowances. FF&E and technology is an allowance. So it is, and I may say it wrong, but it is $2,000 per student for furniture. No, it's $2,100 per student for furniture, and it's $3,000 per student for technology. I think that is that one, I always confuse if it's 2,100 or if it's 31. But anyways, it's an allowance. That allowance does not fall into that 592 caps. It's in addition. In addition to that, they allow to exclude demolition and site remediation from the cost estimate and put it into the allowance. And this basically is part of your total project budget, but is not part of your cost per square foot cap. Okay?
So I think we
That-
can,
those
we can
budgets-
take advantage of some of what they're
Yeah.
suggesting, right? So we can move it below.
Remove
Yeah,
it,
and we
remove
did
it
that.
to another
And
part.
we did
Okay.
that.
Okay, that was my next
And we did
question.
that,
Are we
yes.
doing that yet?
Yes, we are doing that. Now, how you're carrying these items in the FF&E, you can carry them in the allowance, you can carry them in the cost estimate. The key is just not to carry it twice, right? So, I can tell you that the allowance is still not very high and makes the furniture and technology costs that budget pretty tight in general with the current. That allowance hasn't changed in years, and the cost of furniture has gone up, so just as a reference. Not that I'm recommending it to carry in one or the other, you can certainly remove those items from your cost estimate, from your construction cost, and you can say that it's part of the allowance, but then you also have to understand that your chairs, desks, and everything else will also fall into that bucket of money. When we are talking overall, when these discussions happen, and the 900 and, I think it was 900 and, what is the 950 square foot all in? What was that?
The square foot cost?
The total, 992. So the number, the 992 square foot, that is all in.
Yeah.
That's the entire 77 million divided by 77. So that is all in, just a round all in number. If you want to go kind of apples to apples comparison for how Wright calculates cost per square foot versus how, like versus what it is, it's lower than that. So I believe it's about 890. So that in comparison. That is all in the, that was all submitted in stage 2. And those calculations were provided. I don't have them with me, but I can also include them to follow up.
Thanks, Inga. Kenny, you want to continue?
It is the SBA's recommendation that the district consider pursuing this project as a design build to maximize efficiencies of project time and cost. Exclusions listed in cost estimate include contaminated soil removal, and yet the response from 3.1.3 ABC states supplemental soil testing was also completed to substantiate an allowance for disposal of potentially contaminated soils. So they're asking for clarification.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Capital improvement projects, new scope has been added. So basically what this is saying, the new scope that we added, we have to get those cost estimates and we have to be able to submit them.
And the new scope is the 2 gyms that we added at the last minute, so
And there's
those
some,
are not.
and there was some other items at the end of the
Yeah.
scope. So those have to get submitted as well. Plumbing, HVAC, I'm going down to the third bullet on the next page. Plumbing, HVAC, and electrical were generated on a per square foot basis for upgrades without any itemization. These costs range from 72 cents to $33 without any indication of the project scope. Some had engineering adjustments that doubled the per square foot cost or added lump sum costs with no explanation provided. These costs cannot be reviewed or justified from a cost estimating perspective. Provide line item cost estimates.
I have a general commentary that we can go through.
Select projects including Lunesset, North Kingstown High School, Campbellton, Fishing Grove, Davisville Academy had a large lump sum millwork scope that were listed as allowances with no unit cost provided. Provide the drawings, line item cost estimates with unit costs and quantities to substantiate that request. Again, it's just noted again about the gymnasiums at Forest Park, Fishing Cove, along with the FF and E school. The fire alarm cost estimate for Forest Park needs to be submitted. Please note that the project budget worksheet for Davisville Middle School is mislabeled. Additionally, there are FF and E and technology costs listed which are only reimbursable for new construction projects. Please remove these costs. As previously noted, separate project budget worksheets, separate project budget worksheets should be provided for projects that included both addition and renovation, as in the case of Forest Park and Fishing Cove. Please submit 2 worksheets for each of these locations. Regarding stage 1 and stage 2 planning costs, if the district is seeking reimbursement on the costs associated with the necessity of school construction approval process, please provide documentation, which we did. So we have follow up on that.
Yeah.
Local support, please provide the meeting minutes from the school committee meeting. Your submission of the February 2025 addendum was approved.
That was
We have them,
provided.
those weren't available at the time. Commissioning agent services, the sample CX RFP provided appears to be missing the first 10 pages.
It was there, it was already clarified.
And supplemental stage 1 materials. SBA is requesting that the district provide operating, okay, so this is providing the operating budget analysis for the new Woodford Middle School, looking at utilities, maintenance, and staffing costs.
Relative to the CAP, this whole section, the CAP cost estimates, I did talk to Ryan today. There were some things that I thought I know were submitted, some things that Keely agreed may have been there. We will go through it and try to, and basically reconcile what's there, what's not there, and we'll provide anything that's obviously missing. But we do have to make, like, just noting that some things are somewhat generally commented that did exist in the follow-up addendum on February 15th. So, nothing against anyone, but we will reconcile this entire section within a day or two. I did meet with Rouse and I did talk to Ryan, and we'll make sure that what we need to provide is exactly what they're looking for.
Thank you. Any further discussion about this item?
We have the comments for the design review.
That's just like
And you also have the document for the SBA preliminary schematic design review. So under design and construction costs, it says please refer to the comments in the April 2nd preliminary application review as well as the November 13th review. So it's the document we just went over and then we have for November. Then under schematic design documents for Whitford Middle School, it should be noted that while the proposed size and design of the school has not changed, the proposed enrollment has increased from 400 to 525. This puts the general square foot per student at approximately 147 GSF, and RIDE recommendation for 525 students is 180 GSF per student. Comment on that? That did the variance.
Is this I'm not unclear, if this is a statement by them or a question or?
Right, so is that where the variance comes in place,
Oh,
rather
yeah,
than
so
looking
we
at
did-
the
I'm
size of the
sorry,
building
okay.
and what we're actually using it for? That would be the letter, the variance that we submit.
Right, so we submitted the letter of variance for specific classrooms, specific programming areas, and that is something that's done with a lot of districts. I have done that when we're trying to. So this is a recommendation, and when we're trying to sort of make a building work or make a space work financially and functionally, variances are submitted, and RIDE reviews those variances and provides, grants variances. Wherever they will not grant us a variance, we will certainly comply. So that has been done in February 15th addendum. So.
That variance was submitted?
Yes, a letter of variance with a narrative and all the information
We
backing it up.
We had done a study that shows how the building would serve 525 through through the program and planning, and
Yeah.
there's a whole submission on that. That's why it was unclear whether they're stating just that they, you know, is there something, are they requesting more, or what
We
does
don't
that
know.
mean? Yeah.
I think they're putting it, it's a statement, it's not a request, they're just they're putting it in writing that our square footage is under what's required, for that many students, if it's middle school students, and then the variance letter which they received, they have a copy.
For this comment, however, we will follow up with Ryan as soon as tomorrow or tonight to get a clarification whether they require additional information from us or what we have submitted is being reviewed at present.
Yeah, so do we anticipate that this will be a problem, or do we anticipate that this is just a comment?
I think they're just putting in writing that what we're submitting is under what their requirement is, and we submitted a variance letter for that. But I think, tonight we're gonna discuss other options, so.
It is also, just as a general statement, meaning you just take the entire building and divide it by the body of students. So we submitted a variance letter specifying which specific areas and classrooms or spaces are somewhat smaller and which are maybe bigger, and how it explain how it works in the context of that school. So what happens is when you submit that, typically they would review it and they would say, okay, this works or this doesn't work, change it. So this, I don't know if it's a problem or not a problem, but it should be responded to.
Under capital improvement projects, the documentation for the new additional proposed scopes of work is lacking and cannot be substantiated. For the updated CIP project scopes, the following are missing. So an updated project narrative, exterior elevations, typical wall sections, single line engineering diagrams, structural plans, outline specifications, project schedule, construction cost estimates, civil engineering drawings, code analysis, life cycle cost analysis, site survey, and then the space summary.
Well, we did meet with Rouse today. I don't know, Jim, if you'd like to comment on those?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably a dozen items right here, and there's a dozen items that are listed here, and across the board, depending on what you're doing for a particular school, some of these items may not even apply. If you're doing the civil work, why would you need a survey, for instance? So we're gonna address these items per school, basically with projects that have been approved by this district to clarify this item. If it's not there, we'll provide it.
Is this generally about the gyms that were added? It says the new additional proposed scopes. And they knew that that was gonna be coming afterwards, but, because that was added at the last, well, sort of.
Right,
at the
and they
last
did, and I talked to Keely about this. She said, we knew that, but they had to put this in writing.
Okay, that was my question.
Stony Lane Fishing Building, Quinnesset, for scope of work involving new interior walls, provide the following documents that were not prepared. Typical wall sections, single line engineering diagrams, and space summaries.
Would you like to comment on that?
Again, it's in the same vernacular that I just stated. We got more than half of what they're looking for has to be completed, so we will come up with schedules as far as how many fifth graders, sixth graders, seventh graders, whatever's in that particular school, in terms of how many classrooms you have, each one of the grades, as a for instance, will be provided. Single line diagrams for engineering depends on engineering systems that we're proposing to put into the building. In some cases, some of the existing HVAC systems would remain and we're just connecting to it. So we'll clarify all of that in terms of by school for these particular areas as well.
I think that also goes back to the utilization piece that you're asking for, the narrative of looking at our enrollment projections and what our utilization of those classrooms would be at those buildings once we have walls. So those are the comments. So there's a lot here to work on. I know from last week, we already started identifying who's doing what work as soon as we received a draft from them. We had that we talked about on Wednesday. Just, I know there was a comment that someone mentioned that it wasn't known that there's a meeting every Wednesday. It's not a public meeting that's held every Wednesday, it's an internal project team meeting. So every Wednesday morning, myself and some of our administrators meet with the project team, which are the architects and Inga, to go through what we need to do and what's happening. So it's not like there's a public meeting somewhere, it's just our internal weekly meeting to kind of check in, where are we at, what are we doing? That happens pretty much mostly every week on Wednesday. It's nothing that, I don't think we're hiding anything, it's just us internally meeting to discuss
No, what I
what we
What
need
I
to do and
said
happens.
was,
so.
it was other building subcommittee, school committee members didn't know those would take, not so much us,
Yeah.
but the shock and the
No,
awe.
and I-
It's like, I was like, oh, so wait a second,
yeah,
I'm not
and
saying anything untoward, but
Yeah,
it
no, but I
was,
know where that came from and who, because I talked to that person about it, I said, yeah, we meet, these are things that's been going on for like, you know, for a very long time.
something we
that
didn't know.
meet and have that, so I let that person know that, yes, we do, we meet weekly internally and go through what we're doing, so. I just want to make sure everybody knows that, so.
Mr. Dugan, can I
Yes.
ask just one question? So is the committee going to look at keeping the current size of 77,000 square feet and making up the difference mathematically for the reimbursement by adding more students? That's my first question. And are you also going to add and look at adding a third floor doing it square footage wise?
We're gonna get to that. So, yes, and we'll go through it. Okay? So we have a lot here, and we're just reviewing this. What Perkins has put together is just some of the work that we started to go through last week of relooking at that design, as well as what RIDE wants us to do of looking at other educational programs. So, yes.
Just wanted to make sure that, just a blanket comment on these comments. I know that this district is going through this for the first time, and although there's a lot of comments, and yes, there's issues that have to be, or items that have to be dealt with, it's not uncommon to see follow-up comments of this kind of caliber. So meaning multiple comments, multiple responses that have to be followed up on. This isn't the only district that receives comments as a follow-up and has to issue addendum. Most districts do. So just wanted to put it out there that this isn't a one-off. Like, the comments always come. Sometimes things are overlooked. These submissions are very large. There's a lot of information. Some things the reviewer might miss, some things the designers might miss. So the back and forth is not an uncommon process. It's just in this case, there's a little bit more than maybe we have to deal with, especially as it relates to cost.
Thank you.
So, comments, questions from the building committee regarding what we received and
I just want to make sure, it seemed like we were good understanding of most things, but maybe a little clarification we require from RIDE potentially, and we have a way of obviously getting clarification so that we're able to respond effectively.
Right, so what I plan to do is some things were discussed back and forth, little things so far, some things were already accepted, some things were a phone conversation. I'll put together an email basically clarifying those things and getting an email hopefully back from RIDE confirming that those are accepted or not accepted or what else they need, because we do want to make sure when we do submit the package on the 12th of May, you know, the fifth submit, there's no follow-up questions to that.
Yeah, I think that would be like, the hope is that just the communication piece is there in terms of like being out in front of potential misunderstandings between us and them, so it's not, you know, at the last minute.
Understood.
so we have to submit by May 5th to RIDE all of this back. We internally meet weekly to review where we're at and what we're doing. Our next building committee meeting is May 7th. I'd like to suggest that we have another meeting prior to then so we can come back to this committee and check in with where we are and what we're doing. I'm suggesting 2 weeks. I'll put it out there. the chairs of the committee, if they would want to put that on it. You know, as we're talking about next steps, I think we need to come back again. So my suggestion is give us 2 weeks to do some work, come back and to have another, pretty much check in with the advisory committee. Is that something the chairs would like to entertain?
I would very much like to do that. Can I make maybe a suggestion, not a motion yet, but maybe the 21st of April, Monday the 21st?
No.
Okay,
You
that's.
know, we're gonna be Monday the 21st? You'll be at a budget hearing with town council.
I'll let you have that
I'll
one.
not be available on 23rd.
Okay, well, tell you what, let's make that an item that Rob and I can discuss, and we'll send out communications to the committee and our vendors for a potential date, but on or about the week of the 21st, between the 21st and the 25th. Reasonable?
Yep.
Very good, okay.
Might have to be the 24th, just looking at district meetings. So the reason the 24th might be the day that we have to meet.
Yep.
So, if we can. So we'll maybe put that out there, looking at Thursday, April 24th, just quickly look at the calendar of other meetings that are happening that week.
Okay.
So as far as the process goes, when we submit on May 5th, is that when they decide if we progress to stage 3, or is there another addendum that's added on, or where are we in the process?
On May 5th is the addendum, and then the vote by the Council of Primary and Secondary Education is the last week, or the third week of May. This is when they vote on this application. So if the reviewers feel that there's sufficient amount of information submitted on the 5th, then they will put the application forward on the agenda, and they will recommend that it gets approved during that meeting of the primary and secondary, of the Council for Primary and Secondary Education. That happens, I believe, just after Memorial Day or before Memorial Day, that third or fourth week of May. I think it's on the 28th, actually, May 28th or something like that. Yes, it's the week of May 27th.
Any other questions, any other discussion?
Just a question on the, we're talking on adding a third floor, is that just a thought, or is that something we're considering? Because that would make a whole big difference. As far as, you know, space-wise. You know, if you go up 3, we've got other rooms somewhere else.
Why don't we, hold on. Why don't we move into talking about, right, so we went through the comments, okay? RIDE is also highly recommended from the last meeting comments, is looking at the design of the building and also looking at the educational program. So there's another document that you have, if you go through that packet I gave you, and it says scenarios for middle school educational program. That so what they suggested for us to do, right? And we want to respond to every suggestion that they gave us, either verbally or in writing. And some of this came through the meeting, of looking at the design of the building, making it more compact, adding a third floor, right? We're looking at all of that. So Perkins they're getting through some of their drawing, doing some drawings. Mark and Tina are gonna present on that of what a design could look like, what it would look like with a third floor. We don't have costs yet, we're still working through all that, but we're moving towards that, okay? They also asked us to look at other educational programming. So what we talked about internally, I met with administration and to kind of write something up to bring tonight, is to consider putting a pre-K wing on the new middle school, okay? So when you go back to the master facility plan, right, so Kelia Kenter was the master, she was hired back in 21, 22, going back prior to when I was here, so going historically, 21, 22, right, the district hired Kelia to do a master facility plan, right, that was submitted around 22, 23. Kelia Kenter is now at RIDE, who is the one reviewing our submission. So she keeps referring back to that and asking us to, look at that and to consider those options. And the options were bringing 5th grade into the middle school, right? Or bringing preschool to the middle school. We know right now in the discussions that we're having currently, we are looking at moving the preschool, right? We want to look at expansion for preschool. We're also looking at better spaces. We're looking at Davisville Academy. There was a study done in 2016. That study is outdated. We're going to discuss that at our next school meeting. I reviewed the study when it was given to me. The study that was done by NSDEC in 2016 was looking at the programming layout and programming that was at Davisville Academy at that time. And a lot has changed since 2016 to now. The programming that was at Davisville Academy in 2016 is not the same programming and usage of that building that we have today. There's more space in that building, and the district right now has a vision and plan of moving those special education programs out of that school and back into the other schools, so those children are then integrated with general education where they should be. They should not be isolated. They're isolated right now. So we've already moved one classroom out this current year. We have plans of moving another classroom out for the fall of 25. That would now have all the elementary programs that were there out in schools. The following year, we would move the middle school out into the middle school, which means we would just have the high school program, which means that building has all those rooms that can be used. So that study is no longer current to what we're doing now in 2025 and 2016. I mean, it's 9 years old. So we did look at it when it was given to us, and it's not.
It is a beautiful building.
Yes. Yeah. So we are having that conversation of the preschool going there, and then other programs and usage of fishing pool. If we look at putting a preschool on to Wickford Middle School, you can see I have some information in here, because what we looked at is, okay, if we are going to add a preschool, what are we talking about as far as enhancement, right? And looking at early childhood education for the future, right? We want to be able to expand how many classrooms, programs we have to be able to service the community that we have in town. But also, we know that we've heard from families that, a half-day program is tough, sending my child maybe in the morning or in the afternoon, so they aren't able to take advantage of the programs that we have. So if we are going to look at expanding, then we need to look at the full picture, right? So instead of half-day programs, right, you look at what would the need be for full day, looking at how many students we have, what are those projections that we have, looking at what we know of how many 3-year-olds and how many 4-year-olds we have. We were able to look at, I have the study that I'll pass out for all of you to take home tonight, the updated, well not updated, but the new study from Cropper for the demographic study. And, it shows that, enrollment wise, we're kind of staying and dropping a little bit, some increasing, but nothing big. But still, even looking at the numbers of 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds that we'll have in the district. So based on that, you can kind of estimate how many classrooms would we need if we're going to build something. If we're going to build something, you want to make sure it's usable for the future, not something that you can't do. We also know that we have private preschools in town. We're not looking to take them out of business. We want to collaborate with those preschool programs and businesses that are in town, but also be able to provide some of that service in district in our schools. So you kind of look at what we have for students. We know that there's 267 3-year-olds in our town and 269 4-year-olds. That number stays pretty much around that range. A classroom per regulations with RIDE for an integrated preschool classroom can only have up to 15 students in it. So looking at numbers and estimates of what could we do, do we put something in place that serves maybe 50% of our community at that age range, maybe less than that? If it's gonna be full day, how many classrooms? So if you're doing a full day program for 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds, and you're looking to maybe, have that space for about 50% of your population at that age, we would need 18 classrooms that would help us with it, like, to get there, right? So if you're gonna build it, you wanna make sure you have the capacity to grow.
18 classrooms per age group?
It'd be 18 classrooms, and then you would do 9 for
Okay.
3-year-olds and 9 for 4-year-olds. If you wanted to do everyone, you would need 18 classrooms for 4-year-olds, 18 classrooms for 3-year-olds. Now we're talking about building an entire new building
Right.
somewhere else
Right.
to provide universal preschool. We're not there. We can't. So that's what I'm saying. If we targeted maybe 50%, how many rooms would we need? That's if you target 50%. But realistically, what do you need? Maybe it's 10 rooms that you can have, 10 classroom spaces. But with that, right, you also need space for speech, OT, PT. So those are additional therapy rooms that you would need to put. You need to make
Storage?
right, you
yeah.
need storage within that facility. There's a lot of stuff that goes with preschool, and then if you start talking about preschool, special education programs, there's other adaptive equipment that's needed. Bathrooms need to be a certain height and requirement, ADA requirements. Then we'd have to you want to meet Bright Star's requirement, but if you're building something, you're gonna build it to meet those requirements. Bright Stars can get anywhere from 2 stars to 5 stars in a rating. You also need to make sure you have an office area, right? So that program is gonna need its own office area for the secretary and the early childhood coordinator conference room space. So these are all the things that we gotta think of as we put something like that together. Then, you need a separate exit and entry for the preschool, completely separate from the middle school. You need to have a separate loop for transportation with drop off for parents and school buses, separate parking area. Right? These are all the things that if we're gonna build, we gotta start thinking of, and that's what kind of outlined and explained in here, and some potential benefits. Right? Benefits would be that you improve efficiency of the space, as well as the increased enrollment at the new middle school, right? We're talking about increasing enrollment. We would get to that 525 by bringing preschool. You got 400 middle schoolers, easily 125 preschoolers. We're already at 107 right now that we have. And then if we expand, we get even more than that. So the number grows, right? That's what RIDE wants us to look at. Increasing enrollment, bringing in educational programs. It would provide a newly constructed learning environment to meet Bright Star's requirements, increase capacity for preschool enrollment in the future, provide a stronger foundation for early learning by increasing opportunities for young children and their future success in school. Early childhood education lays the foundation for lifelong learning. High quality preschool experiences have been linked to improved readiness for school. Higher performance on standardized tests and increased high school graduation and college attendance rates.
And that's just not an opinion of somebody, that is
No,
proven
this
fact.
is all proven fact.
Research.
Access to universal preschool has been linked to higher rates of high school graduation and college enrollment. Early childhood education fosters essential social and behavioral skills. Children develop better social adjustment, emotional regulation, and classroom behavior, which contributes to long-term success. Some concerns. This would potentially impact the current stage 2 application that was submitted to RIDE to build a new 6-8 middle school at WMS, and the renovations to capital improvements for all of the district school buildings. We would have to analyze any change in project cost. There are also concerns that this would be a long-range plan, but would not do anything to address immediate problems with overcrowding. We would still need to move the preschool to Davisville Academy in the short term, right? So what I'm saying is, we could build that preschool, but we have an immediate concern with our current preschool. We would still have to make that move temporarily until the new building is built. And either way, like, that is something we need to resolve for next year, where we currently.
Can you think that?
Yes.
I think that like one thing that's important to understand with this is that to Jack's point about the 3 floors and Kenny's point about the preschool piece, is that when it comes down to what we're looking for here is We're looking for how to maximize reimbursement and also how we're looking to present a vision for educational programming in our district, and how that vision is going to be essentially, like moved forward through a facility. All right, so what we're talking about here is a proposal, okay? The idea of expanding pre-K education and also incorporating it within a new middle school setting presents the reimbursement factor because you're increasing the enrollment by adding preschool program to a middle school site. The increased enrollment benefits us with reimbursement, okay? We're also presenting a vision for an educational plan that's rooted in best practice. Expanding preschool education for students is unequivocally a terrific investment academically for our town, without question.
Is there a preschool, thing now in place right now?
There is.
Oh, okay, I think we are.
It's a half-day program.
It's a half-day program.
Yep.
Do they
And,
use all the different schools?
Correct. It's currently at Fish and Cove.
Oh, okay,
Yep.
okay.
The idea here, and again, this is very much in the early stages of discussion, would be that it would be something that could be looked at as a potential program to accommodate more students.
So that's something for us to consider. I did ask Mark to look at drawing, like what would that look like? We need to discuss this, we need to start somewhere. Is it feasible? What would that look like? Do we have enough space there? And, it's something we'd have to kind of really work on if that was something that, we put forward to Ryan. The other option is the new.
So going back to this idea, so I see such a difference in what you do with preschoolers versus middle schoolers. I'm just wondering, will this add a lot more to the cost? I mean, in terms of, because you have to have playgrounds and things like that you wouldn't have to do for middle schoolers. And so I'm also thinking, does RIDE want us to have this dual use or a greater use? Do they want us to bring the grades together, or are they just looking for that we use the building more efficiently, that we can accommodate more people?
When you say bring the grades together,
Just that we have preschool, I mean, just like I said, preschool is very different than your 6th, 7th, 8th graders. Are they looking that we have this dual use because they think that it would be educationally sound to bring kids together of these, or is it just that they want more use
so
of the
I wouldn't
bigger
say it's
building?
about bringing the preschool and middle school kids together. It's about better utilizing a space that we have and building a school and building a new preschool learning environment. Also looking at some of the challenges we currently have in district with program placement where they can be and wanting to expand. We can build something so you have that space to expand in, and also being able to take that space, increasing enrollment, maximizes the reimbursement that we would get back.
But at no point would these students cross over. There'd be no involvement with middle school and the smaller kids.
Or we'd be
the
completely
idea-
changing the project though, in terms of, because you'd be, I mean, right now the project is centered around, and everything that's been presented to us has been much more for middle schools, versus you start bringing in preschoolers, you're really changing the design of the building, am I correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you would have to have a completely separate area, right? So you'd have your middle school, right? And then you have to have your preschool on a separate side, so that way it's completely separate from the operations of the middle school.
But you'd have to also have them have access to, if you're talking like little kids, you're probably gonna wanna be able to use a gym. be
Well,
able to
you'd
use-
have to have a playground, right?
to have-
It's
yeah,
not so
yeah,
much
the
the
playground
gym,
would be
but you have to have the
obvious.
playground.
A walking track would be obvious too, so that you could have much time to do things like that.
So you would have, in building this, you'd have to have a preschool playground attached to that middle building.
Do we think
With
that
fences.
the area is that big to put both of these here? I'm just thinking, Wickford Middle School, of our 2 middle schools, it is the smaller footprint in area. That would be one of the concerns I would
These are
have.
good things to be bringing up for us to talk about, so.
And if the, Kenny, if the numbers kind of hold, we could be looking at, if we have just hold the middle school to 400, which is kind of a difficult number anyway. But if we add 200 or 220 or 250 or 270
For
preschoolers.
Well, we would never go that high. So that's what I'm saying, like, we'd have to say
Yeah.
that this is what we're building, and knowing this is this is where we
Okay, so
are.
we wouldn't build for 50%.
So, when I put 50% out there as a number, I don't think we can.
Okay, yeah,
Right?
because I don't think we
What I'm
can do
saying
18
is, we
classrooms.
would need 18 classrooms, the amount of
Okay,
space you would need.
So more likely 10, maybe, yeah, gotcha, okay. I just didn't want to think that the overall
Because at that
number
point, you're
would be
really looking at,
600, yeah,
might as well build an early learning center.
right.
If you want to push it.
So does this mean we would have to resubmit stage 2?
So it'd be
Change the
part,
project?
what they're saying is when we submit our addendum back, they want us to respond to that based on the comments of the design and the utilization of that building. They would like to see designs that are different. We submitting with the design and the cost. That's what they're suggesting.
And that number being 525.
Well, around there,
Around.
but it could be more, based on, you know, I mean, like, and then if you added education programming, that could change the reimbursement as well, because you use the building. So, the other option, just, I'm gonna put out there, is having the new middle school building, 6 through 8, only, you know, currently what we're talking about, and increasing that enrollment to 525. We have the demographics from Proper. We know that in 28, 29, based on these demographics and the forecasting they provided, they're looking at about 479 students at Davisville and 378 at Whitford. We'd have to make that change, and we'd have to move students from DMS to Whitford to meet that number of 525. And then third is moving 5th grade to the middle schools. Would be the third educational programming change that we could put out there. That has been discussed before. It wasn't favorable in the community of putting 5th grade at the middle school. But that is another feasibility that you could do. So, any conversations on
Have we gotten any sort of feedback from, I mean, is this the first time you presented this to like teachers? We don't have any feedback from teachers. That's
So
my
all
question.
this was presented a few years ago. These are all things that were talked about in this district a few years ago. Part of the master facility plan, the whole 5th grade going to the middle school was part of the first bond. So we're just bringing up what we already discussed. They suggested that we have these conversations again, and wouldn't prompt any change in the design of the building and moving forward.
And this again is kind of coming from, on the heels of the feedback we got from RIDE. They're asking us, right, for more description as far as how the building's gonna be utilized, right, to come up with that. And since we got the enrollment demographic report, it kind of gave us a little more specifics to go on, right? So that's where this kind of came from, is that, all right, if we're going to increase enrollment at Whitford in order to maximize our reimbursement, these are some options that we saw being discussed. So it's really a point of discussion at this point. You know, what are our options? You know, what can we do? Now, these are options that, again, like Dr. Duba said, these aren't new options. These aren't things that have come out of nowhere. These are things that have been bantered about in the community at various times over the last few years.
So if none of the options are, if none of the presented options are good for the district, what's next? Like where else would we go? Are we trying to lessen the cost per square foot on the new building? Is that what this is about? So do we have to start cutting down on the project?
That's, again, that's part of the equation, right? Is the cost piece is gonna be looked at, obviously, regardless. You know, that's being looked at right now as part of what the feedback we got from RIDE was. That's being looked at regardless.
Yeah, it's both.
Yeah.
Both looked at. I think he called it, Dr. Karina called it a sandwich approach, looking at bringing costs down and eligibility up, so trying to close the gap as much as we can. So both ways.
So the more, I don't wanna say the larger, but the more students you have in a building, there's a few moving pieces in there. So one is more students gives you a different square footage per student allowance. And then when it's put into the formula, the more students you have, the more funding the building will be eligible for. So, and the better utilized the building is. But because, for instance, although you have more students you have more classrooms, but your gymnasium, say, and your cafeterias and your common spaces don't necessarily change. So that is why sometimes, and not sometimes, in most cases, if you compare cost per square foot, so allowable cost per square foot will give you more funding for the building, but also bigger buildings tend to be less expensive to build on the cost per square foot basis. So there are some examples in the state where those combined buildings, the middle high schools, for instance, the middle high school, I think there's one that is being built right now in Middletown. The larger the building is, the less the cost per square foot is going to be. Because of its utilization and because it is basically, it has more classrooms, more people, but it has similarly sized common spaces.
But if you're building with
But the combined school didn't pass.
4 and 5-year-olds, you'd have to make that almost a separate school. They'd have to have their own library.
Yes.
Their own play area, their own cafeteria.
That all adds.
They're not gonna be eating the same.
So we actually, so
That kind of
with
stuff.
preschool, you don't have to have a cafeteria.
You won't have to.
Right, well, they can eat in their classrooms.
Yeah,
So you don't need the same setup
Okay.
as a, K-5.
It's not uncommon to have a preschool in a middle school. I actually know a few buildings like that, but you are correct. You do have to have a play area that has direct access to it and certain spaces.
Yeah, and that's like the preschool in a middle school, there are models out there that have them. There are models of middle
It seems kind
school.
of funny.
Yep, there are models of 5 through 8 middle schools out there.
Picture when I was a kid, we had one school, we sit in the garden through 7th grade, 8th grade,
Yeah.
in one building. So it was kind of like, that's what happened to me.
So,
Can I ask a question or
so,
not?
so no, because we have to follow our policies, so we can't.
Yeah.
Go have that.
There's lots.
My suggestion is to move to the presentation, just because there's some suggestions in there, and you're kind of breaking down the cost and showing what a different design could look like.
Yeah, and, I don't know, others have to move their chair so they can see better. They only have the one screen, they're afraid to move it around.
Oh, yeah.
What are you gonna put? Okay. So just to be clear, I'm Mark McCarthy, I'm with Perkins, he's been one of the architects, Tina and I, the architects for the Woodford Middle School. So just wanted to, Dr. Duba had asked us just to step back and talk a little bit about the process, where we are. We're in the design process, and I know there's been a lot of talk about the history of a lot of the studies that have gone on, but we're real early in the process, right? We're stage 2 is not even full schematic design, so and schematic design is only the beginning of our design process. So we're here, So the cost estimates that a lot of people have been focusing on, that's only our first. We keep estimating all the way through 60% construction documents. As we go, obviously, more and more drawings, we get closer and closer to what the real cost will be, and contingencies come down and so forth. So, and I'll go through that a little bit. The other thing I think it's worth noting, because we're talking about that tonight, as far as RIDE's concerned, what we're trying to do here is establish what the concept is, what the scope is. If the building changes shape a little bit, if we continue to find cost savings and the square becomes a rectangle, that's no issue for RIDE. What they want to know is, what's the intent of the project? What's the scope? Are we going to put preschool in? How many students are we designing for? Those are the things that they will hold us to as we go forward. And they understand that design keeps going. So a little bit about the cost. We've talked about that. I know a lot of folks, have focused on the $992 a square foot. We just wanted to talk a little bit about what goes into that. So right now, from the design we gave to our cost estimators, the hard costs, the largest part of that, the yellow part, that's about $659 a square foot. So that's, if everything was bought today, as far as what we drew, we're at $659. What comes into the total project costs are, we have to add also, there's a couple of premiums. One of them is net zero. So we've asked, one of the goals for the district is to have a net zero energy building. There's roughly about $5 million that goes into the extras, geothermal wells, solar panels. The building envelope is a bit more robust in order for us to get there. And we've done studies on how that gets, how the payoff for that is over several years to recoup that money. So it's about $5 million that goes into the net zero energy. There's another, I think about $500,000, what I'll call resiliency. So when we're building near coastal areas, we need to build for wind debris and so forth. So glazing, the frames that go into the windows, those all are beefier or more robust because of that. It's, again, that's a round number because we're early on. I know we're working on a project over in Bristol where we've managed to get that number down. As the design gets a little closer and we meet with code officials, we can work to minimize where we're exposing the building to that kind of conditions. And then we have soft costs. So we talked a little bit about that earlier. That's the furniture and fixtures that go into the building. There's also fees that go into that. So there's been a lot of talk about the fees, the expenditures for the architects and for the OPM. That's all part of the project cost. So the fees that have been paid towards design professionals and towards the team, that's included in the project cost. So that's all included in the overall what RIDE looks at. Finally, there's contingency. So we're early on in the process. So there's blended about 11% in contingency. So about half of that's design contingency, meaning we haven't drawn enough of the building for us to be absolutely sure we've captured all the costs. And then there's construction contingencies, what comes up when you start to actually build the building. So we're really reluctant to reduce that number because we're so early in the project. As we go forward and we get closer and closer to completion, that number will go down.
So somehow when this was brought into this format,
The
percentages
lines
changed.
number?
I know the percentage, so it's missing text around the pie chart. So we'll just, when we issue this, we'll change that.
So, yeah, excuse me, Mark.
Yeah.
What does RIDE recommend in contingency?
So escalation and contingencies should not exceed 6%.
But as you said, Mark, we're early in the program,
Right.
early in the project, so that's likely to shrink.
Yeah.
Now,
So if any,
it's 6% flat, meaning just 6% on top of construction cost. Typically what contingencies are factored, but escalation is typically, well now, it is 6% to midpoint of construction, so it's a kind of a build-up formula. And with current market conditions, it might even, the recommended escalation might go up.
So
We
that
don't-
does include contingencies, are escalation and contingencies, and we gathered all the contingencies in the different locations.
And just for everybody sitting here, contingencies is like a uh-oh kind of money. Like, we didn't think it was gonna cost that much, so we're gonna draw out of this bucket of contingency money?
That's about half of it is
Yeah.
ARPA money at this point. That's the construction. Oh my God, we hit rock. We didn't think there was gonna be something like that. The other half is design contingency, meaning we've only drawn about 10 pages of drawings, and there'll be about 200 pages of drawings when we're done. And the cost estimator, no matter how good they are, they can't anticipate everything that's gonna be in those drawings. That's why I mean, as we go further with the documents, they will have more information, and that contingency will go down.
So did you say that 11% includes the escalation costs?
It does.
So is that 11% way off? You know, we heard that Ryan said the contingencies were way out of whack.
We're gonna continue to look at that, but that is representing what was, in the estimate right now. And so it's escalation, it's contingencies from those different locations, and, as Mark said, it also does, take into account not only, the development of the documents, but also any kind of unknowns that come across the site, so it's a responsible, carry.
So we were talking before, you were asking about what's our strategy. So as far as Woodford Middle School, there's two kind of buckets of things that we're looking at. One are the cost reductions. We've heard a lot about that in the comments. Can we make the building design more compact? We'll look a little bit at that. Can we simplify the building envelope? So as far as the architecture goes, the envelope of the building is the most expensive part. Glass, brick. Can we make it as simple as possible? Can we not just make it more compact, but simplify it to save money? And then we'll evaluate the contingencies. And that's something we're doing collectively. That's not just for us to do on our own. That's an important decision that the committee will make about, where we think we can afford to tighten up without exposing us to risk later on. Then the other part of that is what we've talked about with enrollment. That's the eligibility. So how much more eligibility can we get? And for the most part, that has to do with enrollment. Serving more children means we'll get more eligibility. It's pretty simple. That's the way their calculation goes. We'll look at that. So I'm going to go through, and these are very, very schematic, but it's the first time anyone on the committee has seen this. So one of the things that we're asked is, what happens if we go to a third story? So this red line is the footprint of the building that we had submitted previously. It was a 2-story middle school on site without pre-K. Let me see if I can go to the next one. I think is more helpful. Right. So in this scenario, sorry, I'm going to move over here. A lot of people have talked about it. How does that work? So that square right there, sorry. That's what we're proposing as the pre-K. So it's its own, it's cost effective in the sense that we're already on the site, we're doing work, we're building roads and parking and foundations. So it wouldn't be as expensive as if we're gonna build a standalone building across the street. I think that's why there's an advantage to doing it as one project, just in terms of the kind of bricks and mortar cost of it. But how do we get that to work? So this is the middle school. The program hasn't changed. So when we talk about trying to make the building more efficient, we're not talking about taking away programs. Still the same amount of classrooms, the same gym, music, cafeteria, all those spaces don't change. Our goal is to try to get that in a more efficient configuration. So that means less corridors, less stairs. That's where we try to find savings. So in this case, The classroom bar would be 3 stories, the rest of the building would be a combination of 2 and 1. So if I look at that, let me go to this one, which has all 3 together. So you can see as you go up the building, enter, the gym is here, the cafeteria, administration, of course, is at the front door. We have our music program, then all the classrooms across the back of the building. As we go up, we have the media center, so that's something that was, if some of you remember, the media center was all on the ground floor, so it was a bit more spread out. So we're trying to compact it. Media center is upstairs, still very much right in the middle of the building. The rest of the classrooms are on 2 and 3, just the middle school. We're not taking pre-K kids up to the 3rd floor, only 1 and 2 for pre-K. So that's, you know, what I describe as an autonomous building. The pre-K is its own. At this point, we're targeting about 10 classrooms that we can fit. That's just our first pass at that. It's hard, you can imagine if we go back to the site plan, how do we get everybody, because as we've been talking about, there's a separate, probably separate different hours, different start and end times, right? You would do that anyway because we don't want that many vehicles all coming at the same time. Preschool is different. A lot of times the parents get out of the car, they bring them into the building, so we need to have some parking and a separate drop-off there. We need to have their own administration, some of the support spaces that we talked about. So that's the idea there. Somewhere in here we need to find a playground for that age group. Middle schoolers don't really have a playground, they have fields, but not so much a playground, so we need to accommodate that. We're trying to do that all within the same site where we still have to maintain our softball field, our baseball field, and the multi-use field, and all the parking and bus and everything that's associated with the middle school. So I just have one other, it's just a rough sketch, because at the same time we're doing that, we're also trying to think, well, how is this gonna be a building that fits here, that fits in this community? You know, a lot of the references we hear are, well, in Providence we did this, and that's a much more urban site, and fits very well in Providence, maybe doesn't fit so well, or wouldn't do exactly the same architectural solution here in North Kingstown. So we're looking at that, how can we, you know, keep some of the vernacular form, some of the scale that we feel is appropriate for the area within what is a 2 and 3 story building.
I think what's important, Mark, you know, is that as we look at compacting this design and not changing the educational programming for the middle school, but adding educational programming if it's pre-K or 5th grade, that the design of the building still fits into Wickford. I was one of the people that went to see the school in Providence, and it's it's a more of a squared off building on a corner. There's no playground, there's no parking lot, doesn't have fields. So when we talk about cost of the building, that 44 million is just a building. This project is more, but we have to remember it's also including fields and landscaping. There's none of that at this other school. And we gotta think that, you know, one community to another of what's there, we wanna make sure the building fits into the community itself. So there is a lot more that's going into this project that increases the cost compared to the school in Providence that they had us go look at. A lot of that was to look at the design, because the design of that school, and they're mimicking the middle school the same. In the middle is the gym and the cafeteria, and everything else is around it. So it was I was looking at the design, the layout of that, but then also all of the walls downstairs with the gym and the cafeteria open up, so you have a larger space. And we saw that, and we asked questions about the space, of what they had. You know, our space, if you think about the cafeteria, the gym, our cafeteria is also gonna have a space for the stage and the auditorium. The way they had it set up, I said, you know, how do you use this space? Do you use it for performances? And they said, we can. I said, but you also now are limited of where you can sit people to see, because you have walls. So it wasn't just like an open space where you could bring families in for performances and stuff that we're talking about. They were looking at more of like, you open up a space so you can bring all classrooms down here. If you're doing a science fair, you have more spaces set up for the science fair. So it's just different uses in different communities of how they're doing things. I don't think we can just take one building that's in another community and bring it here and say, okay, we're gonna design it the same way. And I think the important thing about the cost is that cost didn't include fields and all, so when we talk about 44 million compared to the 77, yes, we know these costs, we all gotta admit, the cost is high, but what's going into that cost as well? It's not a simple apple to apple comparison.
How many acres this site is.
Yeah, so this is 12.38 acres,
Yeah,
and
with,
you're right, in an
you
urban
know,
situation.
Right, they don't have,
Redoing
that
the
space is
fields,
not there.
redoing
Yeah,
all the work.
and we have the geothermal wells too.
What I'm saying earlier, what you were saying is that by condensing all the classroom buildings, you now have more cafeteria space, kitchen space, gym space, media space. I know there was no auditorium, but you had an
We still, and we still have all that in the.
Yeah, but you're gonna have even more space now than what was originally planned on for
Well,
it.
I think RIDE felt pretty strongly that condensing the building would result in savings. That wasn't our preliminary, that's not the feedback we got, but they felt that they had seen that, so we said, okay, that's what we're gonna look at. But I think the other thing that came up was, well, when we do condense that, can we bring the pre-K onto the site where we didn't have the space to do that before? So, you know, and we're not done yet, and you can imagine that, you know, starting to look at, you know, shifting some of the geometry around. You know, we need to keep all these parts, you know, we need the bus and we need all the parking and everything like that, but I think we continue to look at that. Again, the goal at this stage 2 is to solidify the scope and in the direction of the project sufficiently for RIDE to say that, you know, that meets with their expectations, so we can move on to stage 3.
You know, in a busing situation, because like pre-K must go to school at 9:30. They usually go late at 9:30, right? And then
I think
middle
that's
school
the
usually they
difference.
like 7:30, 8 o'clock.
Yeah, so Jack, to answer your question,
There's gonna be quite a bit of a.
there's a difference, right? So right
lag
now,
enough where busing shouldn't be a problem.
right, middle, you know, you would look at the start time of the middle school program versus the start time of your preschool program.
You would have to-
You adjust the times, work with transportation, so
Yeah.
all of that's not
Yeah.
happening at the same time.
We try to keep those loops different, so there's lots of queuing, because, you know, as I said, these kids hop out of the car, and these ones get brought in, so it's a little bit longer. And then we want to keep the buses separate as well.
Mark, is there still, I mean, this is the first design that we're bringing forward that we're all seeing, just from the conversation we had, you know, only 5 days ago, really.
Right.
Not even a week ago. I'm thinking there's probably still room for us to compact that design and maybe move some of the, you know, of pieces of the building around to make it more compact as well of looking at the design. I know we have to consider where the solar panels are going and the height of the building and direction of the
We
sun.
also want, and I've had you visit the school, I forget the name of the school.
Spaziano.
But, you know, we are trying to keep the orientation of the classrooms correct for daylight. We're trying to make sure we have natural light in all the spaces. So, you know, sometimes in an urban school, you can kind of pack things in, and maybe media center doesn't have windows and things like that, which sometimes you have to make do. We're trying not to do that. I think the other thing, people would be, you know, do we mirror this? Because, you know, we have some space here, which I'd like to use. I'd rather have that over there. We can use it for playgrounds, and so I think we might look at rotating and things like that. So it is the first pass. The other thing that we're still trying to keep, not blend the program, right? But at the same time, keeping those younger students on the lower levels, right? And you don't want to have, you want it to be an autonomous.
And one of the things I found out today, and I know we haven't been able to talk since I found this information out, so we were talking about the preschool, you know, does it have to be one level, can it be 2 levels? And it does have to be 1 level, right? So that's gonna impact our design. So when we were talking the other day about, can you have preschool classrooms on a first floor and a second floor, and we were trying to go back that, you know, typically a preschool you have to have on the ground level entrance and exits, and that is a requirement. They said there could be some a possibility of depending on a staircase, if you did 2 floors, because
Yeah,
you have a dedicated
we've done
staircase.
it with-
I mentioned, Chris, what you had mentioned about another district, how they're doing 2 floors for preschool. But when I was talking through this with Kelia earlier today, she did say it is preferable that preschool's on 1 level. So it could still be 2 levels on that area, but maybe something else is on the 2nd level.
Yeah, then I
not
think we would look at
classrooms.
more of a stacking, you know, like sort of layer cake. So the first floor would be the pre-K, and then have 6th and 7th and 8th graders on the 2nd and 3rd floor. Do it that way rather than side by side.
Right. And it's still separate because they're in 2 different locations of the building.
Right, yeah, we keep stairs separate and so forth, so they're not circulating with each other, right? Yeah.
Mark, can you go back to the overlay for the 2-story and that slide for a second?
You wanted to see this?
Right,
Yeah.
so just, and that's only my personal knowledge, because I've gone through a 2-story and then it went into a 3-story building process, and the savings that may or may not be there. The whole point of making a 2-story building and 3-story building is to condense its footprint, so the footprint is smaller. But when you go up, also the building is heavier, right? And your site, your foundations and your site improvements might be higher in cost. Have you looked into that? Because by looking at this right now, it just seems like even the footprint is not changing a lot, right? So the building is still.
Well, it's not changing because we added that pre-K.
I
So
see,
it
that
would
is
be-
what's
it would-
happening,
Right,
okay.
if you, I don't wanna make the thing change, but if
Yeah.
you took that away,
I
it's,
see.
you just see what I mean, we're,
Yeah.
yes, we're compacting it, but then we're adding back in
I
some
see,
more
I
programs
missed that,
to help
okay.
it. That's okay. The other thing we're not doing right now is, we're not building over the gym, because that's gonna increase our, gyms are big
Yeah.
span. Chris will back me up on this. So we're trying not to build over the gym, that just makes a much more expensive gym, we have to carry across that. So there's a couple, it's not all 3 stories, because of some of that, but we'll keep working on it for sure.
Have you had a chance to look at cost yet, or, what you're taking out, or what you're putting back in? Or?
No, we need to get more information, we need to really find out a little, we're still hearing more about the program and so forth, so.
Understood.
But we need to soon,
So do you have the big gap in between the buildings for light? Like, you have the one wing up above?
Yeah, and that's not completely worked out now, it's a little bit long and skinny, but yeah. Yeah, because the classrooms, we really want to have the classrooms, most of the classrooms face north and south. That's just a much better, in terms of daylighting and glare and performance, in terms of the net zero energy. It's like a 15% improvement if we can keep the classrooms north and south.
In terms of the net zero, I think I remember you saying first bond that a 2-story building would be much more efficient than a 3-story building. Is that correct? If you're going 3 stories, will the roof space available for solar panels, which provide us long-term savings? Is that, and does RIDE take into account the long-term savings that may be reduced? Is that something to think about?
It's a great question. It is something we need to calculate. I will say that when we're looking at net zero energy, the geothermal is overwhelmingly the most important part. Now, it's easy because you can see the photovoltaic panels and we have them on our homes and so forth. But without the geothermal, it's very difficult to get to it. So that's the more significant piece to it.
And the
But yet it's-
geothermal, is that in the?
That's under the
blank
parking.
Parking.
But it is good, we do use as much of the roof as we can, so we do need to continue to look at that. I just want to say one other thing is that, because I think sometimes it gets characterized as kind of adversarial, and it's not quite that adversarial, our relationship with RIDE. I think as a team, we meet with them, they give us suggestions, we go back, we work on it, we go back with them again. I mean, I think and they've said this many times, their intention is always to provide as much support for the district as possible. When they see something we're doing that they think is that we could do better, they ask us to do that, and that's kind of the process.
So I will say, Dr. Duva, my comments earlier about the preschool, I think part of it is that we all think of education, we think of the model that we had. And my model was elementary, middle, high school. So I don't want you to think that I think that putting the preschool in the middle school is a bad idea. That, it's just what I'm not used to, but I do realize that my model is old. I went to school a long time ago, and that education has changed. That if you put forth the recommendation and said, hey, I think this would be good for our district and good for our students, that I'd be very supportive, because I do know that my model of education is old.
I'm gonna agree with you on that, and it took me a little while to kind of come to this, of thinking like, what are the benefits? Because my first thought too is, why are we putting preschool at the middle school, right? When I, heard of that before and whatnot, and it took some time to kind of really look into, think about the research about preschool, think about the opportunities of building a new site for preschool, and what that would provide to the community, and also kind of going through like the pros and cons and what we would need, that, we can't build this and have it separate and keep it with its separate entrance, exit, transportation. I mean, this is the, first drawings that they were able to do, and I give them, thank them and give them credit for doing this. If we just got this information on, from last week, from talking with them about the direction they want us to go in. I think, this needs obviously more work on our end of really looking at it and fine tuning what that would look like, and looking at the design. But it is a possibility of something we could do, and it would have a lot of benefits for our community, educating our early childhood population.
I'll just add, we're doing, actually RIDE asked us to look at, we're doing another project in Providence, and we're putting the preschool in the high school. I think it works from architectural point of view. I don't want to speak to education part. Is unlike elementary school, preschool is pretty autonomous piece. They eat in their classroom. They're doing most of their activities, so there's not as much mingling. They're unlikely. They're not walking down the hallway to use your gym in the middle school, things like that. So we can put them in, as long as we give them good space and they can, we can access the building. I think it can work in a lot of different configurations.
I actually went to a high school that had preschool, and that was, 6 years ago. It still has it.
You're only in preschool then, though, right?
But and we didn't even, I know it's there because I babysat someone from that preschool, but we didn't even know it was there. It was just its own space for the playground.
Just one thing, but I remind you, on an athletic point, there's boys and girls soccer team at the middle school, a boys baseball team, girls soccer team, girls softball team.
Yep.
We have an indoor track team, outdoor track team, and cross country team. They also have, I think, wrestling. I was wrestling now in the middle school too. So just space-wise, and it'd be nice to have somewhere, if you have any land extra besides there, to throw a track. And I know they try to use the high school track, but it's just difficult to get time on the high school track, and we have an extremely great track program in the state, in the town. And it's just one thing I like to put in my mind, and I would love to see an outdoor track. We'd have to be the best one, but one for the kids to be able to run and not have to run the streets. I find that dangerous. Just a thought.
If we do something that is so totally different, will that mean that we'll need to have more time to do our submission?
So what RIDE is recommending is that if we make this change, we submit it to them by the May 5th submission.
Okay, so you,
They're asking for us to submit something like
so we
that.
could still do something by makeup?
Yes. They're asking for us to strongly consider it. I mean, others were there, I mean, that was a strong
Yeah.
consideration that they.
Yep.
And that's the balance, the numbers.
Yes.
So how many square feet, I know early numbers, how many square feet is this pre-K going to be utilizing, average?
If you don't hold us exactly to it.
I'm not holding it
10,000
exactly.
square feet, something like that?
19,000 plus or minus?
Yeah. 10, if that's 10 classrooms plus some support space. Well,
And is
you know, because the
there,
classrooms are a
Sounds
little,
about right.
the classrooms are a little bit bigger, the classrooms
Yeah.
have a bathroom in them, you know, so there's a little different than the other.
so I guess I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around, we're trying to increase the size of the building, lower the cost per square foot, but in the long game of all of this, the dollar value is still gonna go up on the building because we're adding a story and square feet for the preschool. So you have a budget to meet, we're gonna raise the cost of the building, increasing the square feet. What's that do to us?
This was a concern that I brought up at the meeting as well, is that means that now it changes the submission of the state of what we're submitting to them. And depending on what that cost is, that's less going towards capital improvement projects.
Considerably. And now, if you're still looking at different ways of doing this, and I hate to say it, but it costs to go net zero. Are there specific directions to us to say we must go net zero with this building?
No.
From RIDE?
No.
It was
I
strong.
mean, they, like, RIDE encourages
Reimbursement.
that
Community went
for the net zero and to be building that and saving costs in the long run, but it's not a requirement.
Is there methods we could use to get an efficient building, but technically not called net zero?
So, there's a few things to this. So, there is that 4% reimbursement to be above code for New England chips. But that can be achieved without, well, maybe with just solar panels, but even without solar panels. So you can still achieve that because that is a water and energy efficiency. I have had projects that achieve that 4% without net zero application specifically. You can do other things. It will be hard to achieve all 4%. It could be maybe 2 or 3%. The 4% is where you really have to be in that net zero kind of realm. And I will defer to the architects and certainly the engineers, but I think a net zero, what has been done statewide and called net zero was achieved with just solar energy and not necessarily the geothermal energy. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mark and Tina.
I'm not that familiar with the projects, but without geothermal, I mean, maybe they're buying offsets or something to get to a technical net
I guess we
zero?
should investigate that because a lot of districts, well, a lot of projects I'm hearing are saying, well, we're a net zero building. Or it could be even as easy as retrofit, they put solar panels on the roof and call it a net zero. I don't know, I'm not an engineer, I'm not a specialist in that sense.
We don't have our
so-
engineers here, but there's, I think the other thing is what's the, to be net zero, but also to look at the life cycle cost and when the payback is and so forth, as opposed to purchasing clean energy or some other scenario where you're getting to net zero, which maybe isn't so much, is more about being clean, but not necessarily getting the payback or the efficiency.
So
We
here's
can look at
another point here, is that Rhode Island Energy and there's other incentives, there's a lot of incentives that at the end of the project will reimburse the project, not necessarily reimburse, it's a rebate program, there's a few things out there that will come back financially almost right away at the end of the project for a net zero project. I mean, even if things like putting solar panels, Rhode Island Energy also investigates and pays back a rebate. It is very hard to build that into a project at this stage because they won't give you a number. There's some maybe calculations we can look at and see what that might be financially, but it is very hard to get kind of like, okay, the district is going to get X amount of money back. What we wrote when we submitted in the stage 2 is when we said that any cost savings or any rebates or anything like of that nature for the net zero will offset the cost of this building. So what that is, we cannot truly say. I will do a little bit more. I think we should look into it a little bit more. But so say, for example, the building is 77 million. It only will qualify from RIDE for 61 or 62 million for reimbursement. There is, I think it was 15 or 16 million that's left on the table that is ineligible, potentially ineligible. Out of that 16 million, 5 or 2, or I don't know how much, some money will be getting back to the district for being a net zero building right away in terms of rebate at the completion of the project. And that certainly can be put back into CIP projects and whatnot. Now, what that value is and how much exactly that is, it was almost impossible to quantify. They need to do a very thorough review. Rhode Island Energy performs a review at completion of construction documents. That's when they set an MOU and they tell you how much you're gonna get back. Then there's other incentives, right, that we did look at. And all of that can potentially offset that ineligible cost, but it is at this point in time, it's very hard to know how much.
Who's the second incentive coming from?
The IRAs.
The IRA.
But that would, so.
Federal government.
Yes.
Here, we're not sure.
But we don't know,
Yeah.
right, we don't.
And the bond though was originally sold to the public as net zero. So if we take that away, that's not what they approved.
I agree.
Not, but.
Well, that's kind of my question too. Are we confident that the way the language of the bond is written, that we have the flexibility to do this?
We do.
Okay.
But we reviewed the language of the bond. The bond is not specific to the middle school only being a 6:30 building.
The other item is that RIDE will, so if the district as a whole agrees to submit on a building that has an ineligible cost that is literally offsets that net zero portion, which is 5 million, RIDE will approve the project. It's not that the RIDE will not approve the project, but RIDE wants to make sure that the entire district and town council and everybody is on board with ineligible funds. Because I don't want, it's important for people to know that it's not that RIDE will not approve the project. They will. Needless to say, costs do have to be, building costs should be looked at in detail, so that they are more in line with other buildings in the district, in the state, minus that net zero component.
Were we originally comfortable with the size of the building and for future growth and everything that we had to build into it? The design as it was submitted.
The demographic study that was redone, and correct me if I'm incorrect, but this demographic study that's fresh, just happened, this basically confirms that the numbers and the enrollment that was presented, that was utilized prior, is not changing. It's more or less the same. But then the next one,
It's a little less.
It's a little bit
Yeah,
less.
It's under, so if you
And
look
that is
at,
what, 15 years?
so if you go to page, look at the total. So if you go to page 22 and look at the total 6 through 8, and you go out to 28, 29, right? The forecast for population of 6th grade is 861. The forecast for 2031 is 887. Forecast for year 2034 is 896. So that at 896 is a little under, was 9, I think the original was 940.
The original was 900 at the very beginning.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this 896 is not far off from where the other scenario is. A total 6th grade population from now through 10 years out. So, you know, my suggestion is that, we continue, we gotta look at the design, we gotta look at how we're compacting it, look at how it's situated on the, land. Look at the square footage of the use of middle school programming versus square footage use of preschool programming. Look at the functionality of that building, right? And so we can report this back to RIDE, that was looked at. And we keep meeting, we got a meeting.
24th.
Well, I'm saying us, we'll meet Wednesday morning, and then, we have next week, and then if we come back on the 24th, we can bring updates to the committee as far as where we are answering all of these questions between the middle school project and the CIPs, as well as the design, and by then you can share costs with us as well, right? And look at how can we bring those costs down of what they're asking us to do, as well as looking at that square footage and looking at 3 floors instead of 2 floors.
So we aren't looking to put all pre-K at Wickford Middle School. They're gonna be spread around all the places.
No, the suggestion would be to have the preschool program. Right now, the preschool program is at Fishing Cove.
And
We would like to expand that to offer more classroom space.
500 kids there in that program, is that what it's saying? 269 and.
No. That's the total number of children. Right now, our preschool program has 107 students.
Kindergarten, okay.
Yeah, no, we have 107 students.
Okay,
Those
that's okay.
numbers on my sheet,
That's okay.
those are the total number of 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds that live in our
That's
town
good,
right
okay.
now.
Now, I was looking at that other
Would
number,
not
they
be-
were just,
There's
blowing
private
my mind
schools in
out.
our town that provide programming, we're not looking at
okay, that's easy enough.
servicing all of
That's
those
not a big deal.
students. Right now, we have 14 classrooms across the district for kindergarten, right? And if you look at, you can have up to 19 students in a K classroom. So that's where we're at with K. We're not looking to support all those kids in a preschool program. Not at this time.
We're gonna maintain 77,000 square feet, more or less, for the middle school.
That's what the current building is providing, is, looking at the size of the square footage of your gym, your cafeteria, and all of your, art, your music spaces,
we'll
your
look
staff, your
to-
library.
What we're not doing is trimming the program, we're trimming the grossing factor, right, which is the culvert and so forth. So hopefully we can get it down a little bit. It wouldn't be, would be by, excuse me?
It wouldn't be 20,000 square feet.
No.
So 77,000 would go up to 87,000, 90,000 square feet.
When we're blended with the pre-K, so hopefully there's some efficiency, so that, to your earlier question, that the reimbursement is greater than, the addition.
The cost of the additional square feet.
Yeah, right, so we're getting some efficiency there.
I would be impressed.
Yeah.
Is that something we wanted to see for next meeting, we think?
Which
The cost breakout?
in 2 weeks, I think we want to have at least some.
Okay, so that'd be the cost breakout for what we're talking about with a potential 3K? Okay. I'll just throw this out there, just, for the sake of everything, like, is that something we want, we didn't really talk much about the 5 through 8, I know there's been, different opinions on that, but is that something that we want to throw out there as a?
I think the public spoke pretty against that. It was a while ago, I don't remember, but I'm almost positive they were not interested in that. I think you'd have better luck with a totally separate section of the school rather than having the younger kids with the older kids. Am I wrong with that?
I think you're correct on that. That was not something that was supported by the community, bringing fifth grade into this.
We ask again, I'm sorry. It was never tied into redistricting, however.
We are
That's
parents.
the only thing that I would say. When fifth grade was discussed, it did not say it could be a long-term alleviation of redistricting. That is an ongoing problem in our district. I don't know if it would win either, but it might be worth a survey to parents to find out.
Or brought up in
If it resolved redistricting, people didn't have an understanding. That wasn't even talked about, in my opinion, when fifth through eighth was brought up. There was no discussion. I went to a lot of meetings. I don't remember any discussion that could be a potential long-term solution to redistricting in our town. That would be my only sell on that idea.
I don't remember. I don't think it ever came up.
I would also say.
It did a little bit, in the first bond, not about redistricting, but that it would alleviate space issues at the elementary schools. Because that was our main discussion about including fifth into that, was to help with that issue. So it was brought up.
Yeah.
What?
But in one middle school. In one middle school, not in both middle schools.
When it was a
That's
separate
not, you know, it wasn't,
Yes,
I mean,
but-
it is different. Because it was also floated that they were just gonna move fifth to Whitford, and then you were gonna have 6 through 8 at Davisville and 5th through 8 at Whitford, and that's why that didn't land well. Because they didn't think that, no one felt that was fair to have 1 5th through 8 to alleviate Hamilton. That was the solution after they did the redistricting 6 years ago. They came back a year later saying, oops, we redistricted too many, let's move 5th graders, and people had, because they were just redistricted.
I would also add to that, when you're talking about the beautiful building, I love the pre-K idea, I love it. But if we're losing money, so we can't improve our 3 elementary schools that do not have walls, we also need to think about that as a huge redistricting issue. That's why Hamilton keeps coming up, we're the biggest school with walls. So I hope that's a big part of the discussion.
You know what I mean? That's kind of what I brought up. I mean, it sounds like this all 3 of those scenarios need to be talked about at the next meeting then.
Now what does that do for timelines?
It puts a lot of pressure on the May 5th date.
So, one other thing that's not in this comments, actually did not, I don't think it was, right? The delivery method does not, it did not make it into the comments though, the official comments.
Well, I thought it was.
Was it?
Yeah, it was.
Maybe I missed it then.
It was under the.
On the estimates.
That was
It
it.
is there.
Okay, then maybe I missed it.
It was.
It was my class estimate. Anyways, if it's
It was,
there,
I
it's
read it.
there,
Oh,
it's
wow,
there.
now we're talking about it.
Right. I don't think that's not on this one, but that might be.
It's on page 3. So it's in the SBA preliminary application review, page 3, above CIP projects.
Yeah, it's the second bullet here. It says it is the SBA's recommendation that the district consider pursuing this project as a design build
Okay,
to
yeah.
maximize
All right.
efficiencies and project time and cost.
Okay, so that is something that, so right now, this project was, the Whitford Middle School, not the CAP projects. CAP projects are planned as a regular lump sum, so the project is designed, it goes out to bid as a whole, and it's awarded to a general contractor, it's called lump sum. The Whitford Middle School was, structured before even I was on board as an OPM. That was when the architect, when Perkins-Eastman was brought on board, or even prior to that, was assumed to be a construction manager at risk project. That is called a construction delivery method, so there is a few that you can choose from. There is the construction manager at risk, there is the design build, and then there is the lump sum. The design build and the construction manager at risk, the main difference is who the architect works for. So in CM at risk, the architect works for the district. In design build, the architect is actually under the construction manager. So the district will have to hire a construction manager that carries the architect. And then there is the lump sum, which is that sort of regular linear process where the architect still works for the district, and then the general contractor works for the district as well. The differences between the three is how the pre-construction services are carried and the schedule, duration. Lump sum is a longer duration. That's why most districts go with CM at risk or design build, because in order to bid a project in a lump sum form, it has to be fully designed, fully drawn, fully completed in terms of construction documents. With CM at risk and design build, you can actually do early bid packages which helps with staggering of the construction itself, making the process from A to Z a little bit shorter, a lot shorter actually. There are conversations that it's actually more of, I still don't have a scientific data or any kind of data I can print or bring, but RIDE told us that if the district goes from CM at risk to design build, there will be a potential cost savings. And that cost savings can be from schedule, streamlining of the schedule, and from how markups and general conditions are carried, as well as the district would sort of solicit a construction manager to be a design builder for a certain amount of money, and then they're liable to deliver a project for that much money with the architect of their choice. The district does not get to choose the architect in that case. They can carry the same architect or a different one, and sort of work with the architect on their end, making the project more cost effective. We have to discuss it in this committee because this is what was asked of us to do. I'm trying to collect as much information as I can. That's not an opinion-based information in terms of whether it's actually less expensive or not. I have requested information from various entities. So I will try to bring it for the next meeting. What I can guarantee is a definitive answer whether it is or it is not cost effective, because I don't know. In my personal experience, it is more or less the same. The only difference is that the drawings and the schedule is a little bit more streamlined because the construction manager controls it, and the construction manager also controls the budget. Meaning, like, they're brought on board to deliver a specific project for a specific cost. So they're kind of responsible for that cost. meaning that if the cost is over, they go back to the architect and they technically have to design it down. But then the architect no longer is responsible to the owner. The architect is now sort of answers to the builder. So there are pros and cons. I have that. I will
So
present that.
We've done it both ways, so it could be with us or it could be with somebody else. That's not, that's your choice. And we're doing some design build now. The one thing we did inquire, not just with our current cost estimate, but with a few, it's really hard for us to do any kind of line item savings. They can't just say, well, design build, that would be 5% less. It's such a complicated way you buy the project and everything that wasn't a simple thing for us to quantify in a cost estimate.
Right.
But with the construction manager risk, the construction manager assumes the financial risk. So we take specific steps to make sure they're not paying anything extra out of pocket as well. And those steps could be negative for the district, no?
Well, it is an open book process, meaning that with construction manager at risk process, the construction manager can say, okay, we would like to carry a higher contingency or an allowance for a missed scope and whatnot. But you, the owner, knowing they shouldn't, tell them not to. So it's an open book process. You can tell them not to carry anything. The GMP is set where it's set. There are contingencies, there are escalations, there are same things that are carried. Those contingencies are reviewed and approved only by you, and whatever is not used goes back to you. So to say, and the same exact process goes into design build. A design builder will never take a project, and I have examples that I won't mention, but will never take a project if they're not confident enough that there are enough contingencies and escalations and measures in place to be able to deliver the project at that same value. So whether it's this or that, it doesn't matter. Everybody will not assume a huge risk, right? Because they still need to deliver a project at a cost, and they still have to deliver a project not at a loss to them, because everybody has to make money regardless, correct? So the only real cost-saving process that's available, I think, and it's only opinion of one person, is a lump sum. Because in that case, you design your project, you have your documents, you finish your documents, you get all your right approvals, you put it out on the street, you put it like just a bid, and you get competitive bids for the design set that you have. The only disadvantage is that it's going to take probably an extra 6 to 10 months to produce that, so the start of construction will not happen. An extra 6 to 10 months from what we had originally thought, and certainly escalation goes up. So there's some, but if you're talking about true competitive bids, the true competitive bid will only happen if it's a full package, and then you basically everybody is competing for that package. And then your contingency is carried by the owner. So the owner carries the contingency, the GC doesn't know what the contingency is, and when there is a change order, then you just give them the money, you approve it. There's it's a straightforward process. In my opinion, this is the only way when you can truly talk about saving of the construction cost. Between design build and CM at risk, there are benefits and there are pros and cons in both. Whether it saves you money or whether it doesn't save you money, like some entities say, I will try to bring as much information as possible, and up to this committee to decide.
Thank you. Got a lot to talk about.
So is there anything we actually need to vote on tonight?
Yeah.
Okay.
What I suggest is that we have the additional meeting in 2 weeks to bring back to give additional information of what we talked about. So we can look at design of buildings, square footage, costs, and check in on all of the, where we are with the providing responses back to us.
Okay, thank you very much. Next meeting date, on or about the 24th. One after that will be May 7th. You know that one's in the books. We'll let everybody know when the confirmed next meeting date is on it, like I said, on or about the 24th. Do I hear a motion to adjourn? There being no further discussion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. Thank you folks for coming too.
Nobody opposed. Nobody's opposed.
I'm not available on 23rd. I hope it's not.
Would you be able to just vote on
When you were building it.
some of what was discussed was clear, like we don't have very good sound because we can't